across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for joining me on my first official evening show on Talk. And what a day news-wise it has been. Day 3 of the Iran war. There are so many different angles to this. There's so many different implications for us here in the UK and for so many people around the world. People in Iran, Lebanon, the Emirates, wherever they are. Israel, of course. We'll talk about the American side of this. Donald Trump saying a lot of quite interesting things today. Keir Starmer also at the dispatch box in the Houses of Parliament. We'll talk a little bit about immigration. There's another story about that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But the vast majority of this programme is going to be focusing on what is exactly happening now in the Middle East and the implications for us here in the UK. I want your views on this. It's really interesting. There's so much to talk about. I can see the phones going already. And if you want to get your voice on the air, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. It's not just about the experts, not just about those people like Colonel Richard Kemp, who I'm going to talk about in a second, who's commanded British forces. It's about everybody, their views on this, what Britain should be doing. Should we support Donald Trump? What do you think about what Keir Starmer is saying? Finally letting the Americans use our bases, but for defensive actions only. There's bloodshed too. There is a death toll that is rising. But could we be within a grip of peace in the Middle East and freedom for Iranian people? There's so much to talk about in this show. I feel very, very welcome in this slot, and I'm very, very happy to get started. And thank you to Stephen Millings, who sent me a lovely message to welcome me. There's so much to talk about. As I say, I want to talk about it with you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You want to send me a voice note, pick up the phone and do so via WhatsApp 0344 499 1000. Keep it to less than a minute. We'll get as many of those on the air as we can. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on the main number and ring me on the main number. I'll give it to you one more time, 0344 499 1000. Let's get started here on Talk. And yes, I am here 5 nights a week, 7 till 10. So much to discuss. This is the news slot, and the news is just pumping out of all the outlets that I've been reading, listening to today, talking to so many different people about their different views. I'm going to talk to Colonel Richard Kemp in just a second, but I want to hear what the President of the United States has been saying. First of all, he says that Iran is a threat to every American. This is what the President of the United States has been saying today.
An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be a dire threat to every American. We cannot allow a nation that raises terrorist armies to possess such weapons, would allow them to extort the world to their evil will. Not going to let it happen. We're not happening to us, and we're not going to let it happen to others. We're undertaking this massive operation not merely to ensure security for our own time and place, but for our children and their children, just as our ancestors have done for us.
Donald Trump there. Keir Starmer speaking in the House of Commons today on the US using UK bases. It's very interesting because there was, of course, so much criticism of him for not allowing the Americans to use those bases. Now he will, but for defensive actions only. This is what the Prime Minister was saying in the House of Commons earlier today.
The US requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose because they had the capabilities to do so. Yesterday evening, we took the decision to accept that new request in order to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved. To be clear, the use of British bases is limited to the agreed defensive purposes. We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law. And we've produced a summary of our legal advice, which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review.
The Prime Minister laid out everything this afternoon. He talked about not joining Israel and the US in attacks. We heard him talk defensively. He had more to say. This is what he said.
We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice, which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review. Mr. Speaker, we are not joining the strikes, but we will continue our defensive actions in the region.
Keir Starmer in the House of Commons. Well, Nigel Farage disagrees with that. The leader of Reform UK had this to say today.
Mr Farage, would a Reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this. Whether this does go to a debate or a vote in the House of Commons, we will have to see. But as I say, British sovereign territory is under attack. We have, I don't think, really very much choice.
Nigel Farage answering a question from our reporter Samara Gill earlier today. Well, Colonel Richard Kemp, former British Army commander, is with me now. Richard, in regard to what has happened over the past 3 days, in regard to where Starmer is versus, to a degree, where Trump is, where should the UK be in this?
Well, from the beginning, the UK should have been right alongside the United States of America and Israel in its operations against Iranian aggression. We shouldn't forget, apart from what I would consider to be our duty to support our allies and stand alongside our allies, we shouldn't forget that the Iranian regime has considered itself at war with Britain ever since 1979, when the Iranian Revolution occurred. And they've killed dozens and dozens of British soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq, using their proxies, using explosive devices to blow our people up. Now, if that isn't good enough reason for Starmer to stand alongside the US, then I don't know what is. And this is a regime that represents immense danger to Britain. It was a regime that is still intent, or was intent before 3 days ago, to create its, or to develop its own nuclear capability, which would have threatened us. Its long-range missile capability would have threatened us. And the final nail on the hammer, I would say, is that, of course, Iran has now attacked British sovereign territory by firing a drone at the British RAF base in Akrotiri.
Do you think that Britain can change its stance at this reasonably late stage after the original attacks? Do you think that's a thing that, well, obviously you think it's a thing that should be done. Could it be done? Will it happen, do you think, or will Starmer continue to hide behind his excuses?
I think the latter. I don't think, I mean, Starmer is well known for making U-turns, but I suspect he's probably, the limit to his U-turn is probably the relatively screeching U-turn on use of our bases for American operations against Iran. And yes, he says it's for defensive purposes, but the whole thing is a defensive purposes. This is a defensive war. I can't see him doing it. And his guiding his guiding thinking in this is nothing really to do with Iran, nothing really to do with Britain's responsibility to protect Iranian people who are being massacred by their own government, or to defend us and our allies against attack. His guiding thinking is all about, he doesn't want to be seen to be taking part in an attack on an Islamic country. Given his extremely weak political position in the UK now, and his very, very strong dependence on Islamic elements and hard left elements who are against Israel, who are against the United States.
So you think he's looking over his shoulder at the Muslim vote here?
That's exactly what he's doing. I mean, it's exactly the reason why he imposed a partial arms embargo on Israel, why he imposed sanctions on Israeli politicians, why he recognized the non-existent state of Palestine. It's nothing to do with reality. It's all about shoring up his position. And I think his position was shown to be even more difficult following the recent by-election when the hard left and the Islamist elements effectively turned against Labour and shoved them out of their seat.
We also saw, I expect you saw this over the weekend, the deputy leader of the Green Party, Mohsen Ali, at a rally supporting the Iranian regime. I just wonder more broadly in all of this and how this will affect us here in the UK, how big the threat from Islamism is, in your view, and similarly, whether this will actually embolden some Islamists, perhaps, to stand with Iran and what they might do.
Well, I think it will certainly embolden Islamists, and as will our stance on the conflict in Gaza, which played a major role, or a significant role, shall we say, in British politics in the last 3 years. And it isn't just about emboldening Islamists, it's also about emboldening Islamic jihadists who have attacked our country numerous times, who have tried to attack it many, many more times, and who will be strengthened by our reluctance and our refusal to defend ourselves as a country. I'm happy to say, however, that I think if this war works out the way I expect it to work out, which is with the fall of this regime in Iran, it will be a huge blow for jihadists, for the international jihad, which is so inspired and supported by Iran ever since the 1979 revolution. And
within that framework, are you surprised, or is this just the natural outworking of things when you see what Hezbollah is doing, attacking Haifa in Israel, for example, when you see other states loyal to Iran, or organizations, terrorist organizations loyal to Iran, the outworking of this, do you think that's maybe not predictable necessarily, but understandable, given the, not to condone it, but just that night follows day essentially in this regard? And I just wonder, if you're cutting the head off the snake, what do you then do next?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the attempt, the fairly feeble attempts, admittedly, by Hezbollah to strike into Israel was entirely predictable. That's what they exist for. Their huge arsenal of rockets, which was badly written down by Israel during the war, was there solely for today. It was there to attack Israel in the event of a US or Israeli attack on Iran. And so it's totally predictable. And there will be other elements in the region and elsewhere in the world, jihadist elements who support Iran. But they've been so badly decimated in the course of the 2 years of war with Israel, particularly Hamas, which has been written down so badly. Also jihadist elements in Syria and the Houthis in Yemen, who attacked international shipping repeatedly. And they've been badly damaged. We've heard them talk about this war and them joining in. We haven't, I don't think, yet seen anything from them. And that's partly because Israel did so much damage to them in recent months.
I don't want this to sound like a glib or flip question in any way, Richard. It is a sincerely meant question. But is there a plan here, do you think? Is there a plan for day 2 in Iran?
I'm sure there is a plan, but that doesn't mean the plan's going to work.
Yeah.
I think, I'm absolutely confident that the United States and Israel have been working behind the scenes, including inside Iran, and by communicating with oppositionist elements, including elements within the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the Iranian army, which is not known for its loyalty to the current regime. So the work will have been going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, may never know about, which hopefully will lead to some kind of relatively orderly transition of regime in Iran. We don't know that, and it's also quite likely there could be a long period of violence and chaos in Iran after this. It's impossible to predict the way it's going to go, but I've no doubt the preparations are in hand to try and bring some kind of order and hopefully result in a regime in Iran which is not going to be so oppressive its own people and also so aggressive against Britain, America, and our allies in the Middle East.
I wonder if you saw, as I saw, some speculation online. I have no idea whether this is true. I don't think there's any way to ever prove this, but it was just fascinating to see, in the wake of the brilliant and incredibly intelligent intelligence operation on the pagers, which targeted terrorists in Hezbollah. I wonder whether you saw the speculation that there could have been agents, Mossad agents, who were working as dentists, who were perhaps putting tracking devices in people's mouths when they were putting fillings in. Is that completely fantastical? Or is that in the realms of possibility, Richard? I just think you're one of the few people I could ask. It sounds like a bizarre question, and it is a bizarre thing to read, but I just wonder, is that completely outside the realms of possibility, or could that have been a masterstroke by Mossad?
I think it's entirely realistic. The powers that Israel has inside Iran with its intelligence services are sometimes beyond belief, and we've seen that in the targeting of nuclear scientists and leaders of the regime outside of this conflict. We've seen the brilliance of their intelligence operation. We saw the incredible pager bleeper operation against Hezbollah. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there haven't been Israeli agents who are dentists who have been implanting tracking devices into some of the regime, probably for years, probably going on for years.
I very much, when the pagers went off, I very much enjoyed some of the, well, enjoyed is the wrong word, but I raised an eyebrow at some of the bleating, tree-hugging, Red-Green Alliance useful idiots who said this was an indiscriminate attack. And I thought, you probably couldn't have a more discriminate attack than someone's pager because they're a member of Hezbollah. Richard, always a pleasure to speak to you and get your supreme analysis on all of that. No doubt we'll speak more at some stage soon. Colonel Richard Kemp, former British Army commander. It is an incredible and dangerous and dreadful conflict to many degrees, but if we can get peace in the Middle East, if the war can pave the way to peace, if we can have an Iran that is free, if we can have women, for example, if women are raped in Iran, they're put to death because they have committed adultery. I'm serious. That is what the regime does. That is what Khamenei did. He was a horrible, evil man. The regime must fall. If this can happen, and if there can be a day too where Iran is free, if the people here in this country, who are Iranians, who all want to go home to, many of them, to a very, very free and possibly even democratic Iran, or even if the region can change, well, that I think is a very, very exciting prospect. Let's hope it happens. I want to thank Darrell in Blackburn, who says, Peter, on your opening night, Starmer is a coward. He wants to keep his hands clean, but quite happy to let the US and Israel protect British bases. He bleats on about Russia and war footings. What will happen if Russia decided to attack the UK and the US said, after your stance on Iran, we're not going to help you? I'm embarrassed to be British today. Nigel says, good to have you on the evening show. Thank you, Nigel. Donald Trump would do well to thank Starmer for use of UK bases, but he'd do better to keep as far away from your current government's fingers, our current government's fingers, as possible for the foreseeable. Amanda in London, shame on Starmer. He is more concerned with retaining the Muslim vote than the safety of the people in this country. That's what Richard Kemp was saying. Churchill must be spinning in his grave, says Amanda. Margaret in Birmingham says, welcome, Peter. Thank you, Margaret. Yes, we should support Donald Trump. He is our greatest ally. Without question, he should have had the courage and leadership to back Donald Trump. What a weak and incompetent Prime Minister. Lots of people saying lots of nice things, welcoming me to my new slot. I'm not going to read them all out, but because that might be a bit self-indulgent, but I want to thank every single person for them, including Sally, Stephen and Angie. Loads to discuss. Mark Francois, the Shadow Defence Minister, will talk to us in a second about what the Conservatives have been saying. Kemi Badenoch attacking Keir Starmer, supporting him in some ways but attacking him in others. We'll get the Conservative view on all of this in just a few minutes. We'll get your thoughts too. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in third place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, what your gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to Nat in Tel Aviv and the many other people who have been watching and listening at the weekend, who have transferred now and are watching the evening shows. Some of them have before, some of them haven't. It's brilliant to have your company, whether you're a new viewer listener to this slot or whether you have been viewing and listening all the time to Kevin for so many years. I want to thank everybody on Twitter who's got in touch, including Ms. Shaz, who says, please, please, please stop showing Keir Starmer making his pathetic, robotic, auto-cue speeches. You're making me throw things on my TV. I'm afraid we do have to occasionally show you what the Prime Minister is saying. Kind of important. Sorry about that. Les says it doesn't wash what Keir Starmer is saying. Attack is the best form of defence. Hiding behind so-called international law is at best divisive. As for negotiation, well, how can anyone negotiate with a barbaric regime whose murder its citizens, rape, ignore women's rights with abuse, support terrorism worldwide, and rule a nation with barely 10% of the population? You're on the wrong side of history, Keir, and so is anyone else who accepts or supports the existence of this abomination. Angela says, I'm so mad we have an office opening supporting the now dead Ayatollah and we still don't acknowledge Iranian terrorist organisations. What is wrong with our Prime Minister? I'm ashamed of him and the government. The IRGC, still not prescribed in this country. Ridiculous. I put that to Priti Patel yesterday, actually, on my final Sunday programme. She could have done it as Home Secretary, but did not. Let's hear what Kemi Badenoch has been saying about national security. She is the leader of the Conservative Party. She was talking about what Keir Starmer was saying in the House of Commons. Leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Why is it that under this Prime Minister, international law always seems to be at odds with our national interest? Why is it that we are giving away the Chagos Islands and paying £35 billion for the privilege rather than standing up for our national interest and protecting the crucial military base, which even now our allies are using? We in this House are elected to stand up for Britain's national interest, and where the government is doing the right thing, we will always back them. So let me reiterate our offer that if the government brings forward legislation to fast-track banning the IRGC, we will support them. But let me ask the Prime Minister, what national interest was served by refusing to help our allies for so long, particularly when we so need American support to protect Ukraine's and Europe's security?
Mark Francois is the Shadow Defence Minister. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us again. Very, very busy time for you too. We also, I'd like to ask you about what Kemi Badenoch has said there. Did she get satisfactory answers earlier?
No, she didn't. And just quickly, and for the record, Peter, very good luck in your new slot.
Thank you. Thank you.
So look, he has continued to vacillate, and here's the difference. On Saturday, Kemi Badenoch tweeted the following, I'll quote, I stand with our allies in the United States and Israel as they take on the threat of the Islamic Republic of Iran and its vile regime. That is Thatcherite quality. There's no umming and ahhing. And yet the Prime Minister today in the House was weak. I was there. He was unconvincing. And he completely failed to address the point that his decision not to allow the Americans the initial use of our run bombs, including at Diego Garcia, which I'll come back to in a moment if I have time.
Yes, of course.
Has made Trump very angry. The president said, we were very disappointed in here. So at the time when, as my leader said, we're trying to keep the Americans tied into NATO. We're trying to stress the special relationship. We're trying to keep the Americans engaged not least in Ukraine, Britain slaps the President of the United States in the face. So it's just balmy behaviour, not least when you remember that Iran has tried for years, for decades, to develop a nuclear weapon. And even after America struck those nuclear facilities some weeks ago and then started negotiations, the Iranians still would not promise to get rid of their nuclear program. So these are the realities that we face. Keir Starmer, it's true, the slogan is true. He's a lawyer, not a leader.
And when it comes to the Chagos element, which was something that Kemi Maidnock mentioned earlier as well, Brian has messaged us to say, good evening, Peter. Trump will now veto the Chagos deal, but will Starmer still go through with it? What do you think happens on that front?
Well, if the president vetoes it, he can't. But we have raised this again and again, Peter. You kindly had me on your previous shows about Chagos multiple times. We've fought this tooth and nail in both the Commons and the Lords. So one of the things that's emerged in all of those debates is that, one, there is no legal threat to the Chagos Islands. There never was. So we're proposing to pay £35 billion of British taxpayers' money to Mauritius to fend off a threat which never existed in the first place. And now, though, as it's emerged in these debates, because of an Anglo-American treaty dating back to 1966, that says we, Britain, can't cede sovereignty of those islands to anyone else unless the Americans agree. So in pub English, they've got a copper-bottom veto. Unless the Americans sign on the dotted line, we can't do this bottom deal. And it now looks incredibly unlikely that the Americans are going to sign on the dotted, because our Prime Minister has managed to embrace the President of the United States. So hopefully one good thing that comes out
yes,
that the Chagos deal is dead. Let's hope so.
Let me ask you about two other things. One is, I asked Priti Patel yesterday why, as Home Secretary, she didn't prescribe the IRGC. She says it's time to do that now. We have an embassy in London which is supporting the work of their regime. Surely that should be closed and those diplomats should be expelled, Mark.
Well, certainly on the IRGC, you should prescribe. And with regard to the embassy, it might be that at some point, if the current regime collapses, we will want to establish diplomatic relations with a new regime. It's a peaceful regime, ideally a democratic regime. Then at some point, we're going to want to talk to them. But in the meantime, it's very difficult to have diplomatic relations with a country which has been firing drones at one of your airbases, the one in Akrotiri. And let's also remember that the Houthis, who were sponsored by Iran, fired rockets at British merchantmen in the Red Sea. They've attacked British ships. We know full well that the appalling attack on the 7th of October, Israel, was carried out by Hamas at the instigation of Iran.
Yes.
So on a whole range of levels, Iran has effectively been an enemy of ours. And also, this is important, they provided the technology to the Taliban and others to kill and maim British soldiers in Iraq and in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You should never, ever forget.
We heard from some Green MPs as well. I have asked Zach Polanski on the programme this evening, or my team has, no response to that. We've also asked Mothan Ali on the programme this evening, no response to that. Mothan Ali, the Deputy Leader of the Green Party, at a protest, protesting in favour of the Iranian regime. Can we take the Green Party seriously on this issue at all? We heard Ellie Chowns today, for example, in Parliament. Have they any moral authority when their deputy leader is supporting this horrendous regime?
Well, if someone is elected as an MP, they have a right to speak in the House of Commons. Doesn't mean I have to agree with what they say. But I think part of the reason that Starmer has done what he's done is because after that recent violence, many Labour backbenchers are running scared. And the Prime Minister today seemed far more concerned to play to his own backbenchers than he was about security of the United Kingdom or of the Western democracies. I'm sorry, we cannot put ourselves at risk because he's got some internal problems with his own Labour backbenchers. You can't run a country like that.
Mark, thank you very much for joining us. Mark Francois there, Shadow Defence Minister. Let's just remind ourselves, if Zach Belansky won't come on this programme, and he's very welcome to come on whenever he wants, I have many, many, many questions for him. He did speak to, who else, the BBC earlier on today. This is what he said.
We've seen what I would say is an illegal and unprovoked attack. In fact, Jeremy Bowen, the BBC's own international editor, said this is a war of choice. So we've got a defence secretary saying that diplomacy is the long runway we need, but he won't condemn Donald Trump when he attacks a country and assassinates its leader. That's the law of the jungle. That's an end to international law, and it's quite astounding that we have a Prime Minister that seems to be singularly incapable of standing up to Donald Trump and letting the UK stand on its own 2 feet. And I'm worried we're going to be pulled into another illegal war.
Zach Belansky actually speaking yesterday to the BBC. Mark's in Cheshire, first call of the evening. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, good evening, Peter.
Sorry, Matt, apologies. Matt in Cheshire, apologies.
No, that's all right. Welcome to your evening slot, and I shall be watching more or less every night now.
Marvellous. Well, thank you, Matt.
It's about the watching some of the celebrations in London over the weekend, and the quality, civility, loyalty, and intelligence of the Iranian people, and their appreciation of what Britain has done for them.
Yes.
In contrast to some of the people from other Muslim countries that we've let into Britain in the last 20 years.
I tell you something, Matt. I spoke actually just over a week ago at the event, the Iranian vigil, essentially, protest anyway, just over a week ago in central London. They gave me a rose. They gave me some beautiful Iranian food. They were saying thank you to the police officers and picking up litter and making sure that everything was done correctly, and that is in vast contrast to what's happens at the hate marches, at the pro-Palestinian marches there. So you're very, very correct to make that point, and I know from personal experience that there is a vast difference between those two groups of people. I wonder, Matt, what you think happens now? What should happen now?
I mean, Trump has said that they're only going to continue for so long, and the rest is up to them.
Is that responsible?
I'm not really sure, because we can't really put boots on the ground in massive numbers, because then it will be seen as a war and not just as an attack. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the window of opportunity is open. But if the evil people that propped up the Ayatollah begin to do the same things they were doing before Trump killed the Ayatollah, then there could be even more murders, and then.
Well, this is the thing, and actually, do you know what, Matt, I'm speaking a little bit later on in the programme to someone who has been a political prisoner in Iran, and she is worried that the regime will use this as an excuse to murder people who are being held as political prisoners. So we'll get into all of that a little bit later on. But Matt, listen, thank you. And can I just say, Matt, that you're a very, very loyal viewer and listener, and I'm delighted that you were the first call. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you for that. Lovely man, Matt in Cheshire, who speaks an awful lot of common sense. We're going to talk about the economic implications of all of this for you and me as well. The price at the pump if you're filling your car, what the issues are about oil, the Strait of Hormuz, which you may or may not have heard of, where so much oil goes back and forward. We'll talk about that with Justin Urquhart's shirt and the effect that this could have in your pocket, the kind of uncertainty as well, which will affect the markets and could affect your pension, things like that. We'll talk as well about to that former Iranian political prisoner a little bit later on. We'll get the American angle. There's so many different things to talk about between now and 10 o'clock, and I want to talk about them not just with my guests, but with you too. Like Matt, your views, your thoughts, whatever's on the tip of your tongue about this story. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to lots of messages coming in welcoming me to the slot. Again, I'm not going to read them all out, but Mike in Colchester, Leslie in Hartley, Val, Sally in Surrey, various other people, thank you so much for those. Appreciate them. I just want to play a voice note now from Hoppy.
Hey, Peter. Just like to say that I'm listening, and there's not just me, there's a lot of people are saying the same thing. And I won't say anything apart from the fact that everybody's thoughts seem to think that the Prime Minister, he is doing nothing except pandering. And the reason he's pandering, he's a little bit late to the party. He's pandering to a vote that he's lost, and he doesn't know he's lost his vote because that vote disappeared in Gorton. That proves where they've all moved to. So he has no vote, so I don't know why he's pandering to it, unless he's going to turn green, of course.
Very, very interesting thoughts there. We'll talk more about the politics, but I want to talk about the economics of this. No better man than Justin Urquhart-Stewart, the economist, who's with me now. Justin, big changes on the world markets. What effects could they have for our viewers and listeners, perhaps filling up their car this evening at the pump?
Peter, first of all, thank you. I'm delighted you've got your new programme as well.
Thank you.
It's a great opportunity, particularly for us as viewers and listeners. This is going to have a very big impact, and it's not just in terms of, there's an oil squeeze or something like that. It's actually going to have a much broader effect. And what you're going to be seeing is, we saw today, the price of oil actually going up quite significantly, but the price of gas, LPG, going up very significantly. The largest operator in this and actually refining it, of course, is Qatar. And Qatar shut their plant down today because of the strikes they'd had coming from the Iranians. And bear in mind, Qatar, of course, was one of the countries that actually operating as the intermediary, trusted negotiator, along with Oman, with Iran and the States. And so, quite rightly, what you're seeing is the other states in the Persian Gulf now finding themselves under attack. And so this is not just one country. This is a region which is incredibly important, now finding itself with a much bigger conflagration. And we, as consumers, at the end of it, are going to be suffering this, and you only have to look at it not too far back in history. The impact of what happens if the Straits of Hormuz are closed. And remember, a lot of that actually is down to actually not so much the rockets firing, but Lloyd's of London putting up the insurance rates, not just for the Straits of Hormuz, but up the Red Sea as well. And you remember only a couple of years back when we saw that huge, great container ship stuck in the Suez Canal. And what impact that had on global trade very quickly indeed. And so we could have found ourselves in a not dissimilar situation. I don't know if the ship stuck in the canal, but actually less ships going up the Red Sea now because of insurance. That means they have to go around the Horn of Africa. That's another 3 weeks or so. That's extra cost. So you've got a slowing economy. You're in a position, therefore, with rising prices. You've got that awful word coming back, stagflation, not inflatable reindeer, but stagnation and inflation together. And we've suffered that before, and it's easy to get and incredibly difficult to get rid of.
The Straits of Hormuz may seem very far away, maybe seem a totally foreign concept, but just give us a sense of what happens there. It's all about oil being transferred, isn't it?
As oil and liquid petroleum gas as well. And say around about a fifth, 20% of the world's oil gets exported through that. And for the Gulf countries, they've got very little alternative. They can try and translate that. There is a pipeline which actually goes directly to the Indian Ocean from one of the Emirates, but it hasn't got the scale of anywhere near it at all. But of course, it's not just what happens to the Emirates and the rest of the countries in the Persian Gulf. It's actually then the rest of the world, because it has a knock-on effect in terms of prices around the world. And considering we've just already been through the most hideous rise in basic costs after the Ukrainian war, and we hope things might have been starting to settle down again. No, I'm afraid we're in for another dose of this, and that's what worries me. And it's not just the oil companies, the obvious being hit. It hits that vital word of confidence, that people don't go out and spend more, they don't move out.
And tourism as well for this country and for the Middle East, clearly a big issue.
God, but what does Dubai do? It's a place where people go there to get some heat and see that thing we never get to see in this country, known as a sun. So yes, so they're an entertainment centre. So that's not very good for their income. Bear in mind, of course, Dubai doesn't have much in the way of oil anymore. So it's going to be difficult for them. But do not underestimate the impact it has elsewhere. I hate talking things down, but I want people to be aware that actually this is a much bigger issue than short-sighted presidents who are just merely trying to say we will have a go at the bad guys. Look at the long-term effect of this. I'm not saying we shouldn't have a go at Iran, quite right too. That awful regime needs to be toppled. But asking people now, after seeing 20, 30,000 students and youngsters being slaughtered by the Republican Guard, it's hardly surprising if the president says, oh, go out, now's the time to knock it over. Are you really going to do that? After just seeing all those people being killed, you're going to be asking an awful lot of martyrdom to be done there.
We know as well that the regime is sending people text messages telling them not to go out and saying that they'd be seen as foreign agents. So there's a lot of repression there, even psychologically as well. Justin, thank you for talking us through that. Justin Urquhart there, The Economist. So many people want to get on the air, and I want to make sure that you get your voice heard. Whatever your view is, 0344 499 1000. We're going to take your calls in just a minute or two. I want to thank Amanda in London who says, has anyone seen Ed Miliband lately? Wonder where he's hiding. What will he have to say for himself when our petrol prices rocket? Shame on him, says Amanda. So much to discuss. As I say, give me a call, drop me a voice note if you want to too, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. We'll have a look at my tweets too during the break. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your...
Lots to discuss. Let's go to the phones. Frank is in London and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. You can too. Frank, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
What I would like to say is time and time again, and I don't want to be interrupted. I keep hearing things like, oh, yes, we are doing it because we have an evil regime. Look, in 2003, I remember very, very well, our government and the American government stood there and swore under oath and told us that we have proof that Saddam Hussein is developing chemical weapons, and sooner or later we will all be at risk. I mean, we all sort of said, okay, if our government says this, maybe they have a point.
You're going back there, Frank. You're going back there 23 years.
Please, can I finish, please?
No, can I just make a point here?
Yes, no. Yes, the point.
Okay, no, I'm gonna make a point to you because it's a conversation, Frank. You say something, then I say something. We know Iran is an evil regime. Okay, we know that.
And we know America is problematic too. And we know Israel is
It's not going around. America is not executing people because they've been raped.
Says who? Maybe not on their doorstep, but America is responsible. Its foreign policy around the world is very toxic. Please don't tell me what America does and America doesn't do. I come from a part of the world, and I have friends from other parts of the world who know the detrimental effects of American foreign policy in other parts of the world. Don't sit there and tell me what America does.
You're spending a lot of time. Okay.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay, fine, Frank. I would have loved to have heard Frank's views on the Iranian regime, which he didn't seem to be criticising very much there. He seemed to be sort of having an argument with himself. Herbie is in Harrow and is giving me a ring on 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say?
Well, good evening, Peter. What would I like to say? How can a man of Sir Keir Starmer's status called the Prime Minister, the man hasn't got a backbone in his body. He's absolutely clueless. It's a shame to be called the Prime Minister, and he's making us all suffer for it. You know, we're the only country that follows the human rights and international law. Russia doesn't, China doesn't, but we do. We're the only idiots that do. Nobody else gives a damn about law or anything else.
I don't know about you, Herbie. I do want human rights to be a big thing. I do want us to follow those as much as we can, as long as they're not crazy things like, I need to live in your country because my son doesn't like chicken nuggets. I mean, ideas like freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the ability to love whoever you want, family life, those kind of things as a general concept are not a bad thing. But I know exactly what you mean about international law, because we're sort of beyond that now in many respects, especially when you have, rightly or wrongly, Donald Trump doing what he wants to do.
Well, the problem is, Peter, why do we have to be the ones that have to lead the way, or so-called lead the way? We gain nothing from it whatsoever. We're always the idiots and the suckers. You know, our credibility is completely gone down the drain now, and I don't think Starmer can ever be forgiven for what he's doing now. He really can't.
What do you think he should do? What would, if you could speak to Starmer, what would you say?
Get a backbone, get a life, mate, and understand what's going on. Why don't you see what the people are saying? Why can't you see what's going on? You know, we're not being dictated by these, these people that are completely out of control and out of order. You know, he's murdered his own people. You know, Ayatollah what? Let me say, Peter, it's so frustrating. It's just beyond belief how this man can say that he's Prime Minister of a great country and he's actually ruining it, I'm afraid. The credibility's gone. Okay,
Herbie, thanks for your thoughts there. Herbie and Harrow there. Alan and Salford, you're next. Thanks for the call. What would you like to say this evening?
Hello, Peter. It's a bit late for me. I used to watch you in the afternoon.
Well, I'm afraid this is my slot now.
I watch your film now, but
it's 7 till 10. You can watch a film another time.
Anyway,
you can watch a film another time, Alan.
The speaker before last was definitely an American hater. Anyway, we can see that.
Frank certainly didn't like Trump. I don't think he liked me much either, but there we are.
No, I don't think he did. The media now are starting, the other media, not our media, GB News and yourself, frightening people now that your oil's going to go up and your petrol's going to go up and the rest of it.
I mean, it might. It may happen, Alan. It's not out of the realms of possibility.
Yeah, but Justin Urquhart-Stewart was a bit ingenuous to me, because I've just got it up on Statista about the oil imports for 2024. Do you know what our main oil imports are? America, 16,000 tonnes. Yeah. Norway, 13,000 tonnes. And it goes down, Libya, 4, and it goes down to 136,000 tonnes. It goes right down. So...
Yeah.
It's disingenuous. We get it from America, Norway, Libya, 4,000 tons.
But it's the whole oil supply around the world, though, isn't it, Alan?
He said Kuwait, did he, or Qatar before?
I can't remember exactly what he said, Alan.
He said Kuwait, you know, they're being bombed. It's going to stop production. Don't forget, this guy's in the city, and he likes to make a few quid, doesn't he, on the old stocks and shares, mate? Come on.
Well, listen, I think it's fair enough to say, Alan, that there are going to be economic implications, as there often are.
I mean importers, as I said, America, Norway, and two other countries.
Alan, what do you think about Starmer? What do you think he should do, should not do?
Gutless. I think he should call a general election, to be honest with you. He's absolutely out of his depth.
What about British forces? Because
so poor. He's U-turned again on this one. I'm not letting the Americans use the base.
Yeah, and then he did. Although he said that. Well, that's an interesting point. Alan, hold on a second. That's an interesting point, actually. That's an interesting point, actually. Just in regard to our military personnel, should they be involved other than defensively? Should we be part of this operation?
Of course he should. Oh, and could I just say about that speech he said? He's not putting our British troops in harm's way. He's the one that's left it open so the 50-year-old and 70-year-old soldiers can be prosecuted and let the IRA off with immunity. What a disgraceful man this fella is. He's thinking about the British servicemen. He don't give a toss about them.
Alan, listen, thanks for your thoughts. Sorry, go on, don't cut him off. Go ahead, Alan, sorry.
I'm sorry, I got a bit irate there.
It's absolutely fine.
And this government needs to go.
Alan, this is where the nation comes to talk, and if you've got something on the tip of your tongue, I want you to tell me it. So thanks for the call, and give me a ring anytime, mate. Appreciate that. That's Alan in Salford there. Alison says, I completely agree with Herbie from Harrow, and but other people getting in touch saying nice things, so I appreciate that, especially Dan and Aylesbury. All right, do you know what? I'll read out one of them. Congratulations, Peter, on your new show. Have you been listening to you at the weekend since you joined Talk No Nonsense and Fair? Enjoy your analysis of these serious matters. Listening to your updates on Jack, says Dan and Aylesbury. And Jack is, of course, my cat. Thanks to Keith in Northumberland, who said similar things, and Mike in Colchester too. Really appreciate those. Let's go to Liam in Accrington, who wants to talk about Keir Starmer. Liam, are you a fan of the Prime Minister?
Not very much.
Okay.
and also, great to see you've got your own show at the evening.
Thank you.
I loved watching you on Saturday and Sunday.
Thank you.
But it's great that you're doing the evening shows now. Keir Starmer, I think, is a traitor to not only Great Britain, but to the US as well. We've been allies with the US since World War II and World War I, haven't we? So for him to say, oh, we're having no part of this, the UK will not be part of Israel and America's strikes on Iran, I think it's disgusting.
Well, listen, I think a lot of people agree with you, although there'll be so many others who will think, do we want to get drawn into this? Imagine this goes on for months, years even. Imagine we're sending people, ground troops, maybe Air Force, air troops, this could be very, very expensive. It could be very risky, and we've already seen American service personnel killed in this. Could that happen to our country? So what's the best strategy here, do you think, Liam?
Well, Peter, what I was going to say as well is, what about these sleeper cells that are in the UK right now?
Well, that's a very good point, and I think that it could. I also think that not just the sleeper cells, but also that they could become activated. But I do worry about if you have people in the Iranian regime, if it's then toppled, where do they go? They'll go to Russia, they'll go to China, but so many of them have so much money, they'll try and take the money out of Iran and bring it here to this country.
Yeah, and another thing is I wanted to point out, I'm very scared of the Green Party at the minute because of the way that they are acting.
I feel exactly the same way, Liam. You know, they would have us think, oh, I'm a plumber and this is all lovely and everything's so marvellous.
Yeah, well,
their deputy leader, Mothan Ali, was at a pro-regime protest.
Pro-regime,
yes.
Yes. Was it Saturday?
I think it was Saturday, Saturday or Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, and then Zach Polanski, idiot boy, as I call him, on Sarah Kunsberg on Sunday.
Yeah, Laura Kunsberg, yeah.
Laura Kunsberg, sorry, yeah. Saying all this crap.
Okay.
And I'm just like, shut your mouth, because you don't know what you're bloody talking about.
Thank you, Liam. Sorry, final point, if you would.
Sorry, I just think Keir Starmer should be held accountable for what he just said this afternoon. Yeah.
Liam, listen, thanks for your...
sorry, a last point.
Go ahead.
What would Winston Churchill say about this?
Well, it's a very, very good point, Liam. Listen, thanks for those points from Accrington. Give me a ring anytime. Gareth's in Derbyshire. Gareth, we just have about a minute before the news. What would you like to say?
Yeah, good evening, Peter. Nice to speak to you.
You too.
Because there's a serious issue about Keir Starmer's judgment here, because when this played out on, was it Saturday the 28th of February, he was unable to decide which side he was on for about 36 hours. Now, I think that is really serious. I think we need a government, that can deal with an emergency. In the wartime, I think Kemi Badenoch would actually be a better person.
Well, you need decisiveness, don't you? You need to know, look, which side are you on and why, and outline that. And he seems to be somewhere in the middle at the moment. That's my impression. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a saying, is it called all is fair in love and war?
Yeah.
And all he wants to know is about legal sort of details. And when it comes to this, you need to be able to decide where we stand. And I don't think Keir Starmer's capable of that. So I think we have a serious problem with him as in charge of this country.
Okay.
Because he's not actually representing the main body of opinion, in my opinion.
Gareth, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And Pete says, Keir Starmer is the modern-day Neville Chamberlain. Now we need a modern Churchill in the form of Nigel Farage. That's Pete's thought on that. So much to discuss. We're going to speak to a fascinating person in just a second, Shiva Mahmoubi, who is a former Iranian political prisoner. She acts on behalf and advocates for these people. What are you going to want to hear this interview? You're also going to want to respond to it. Please give me a shout. 0344 499 1000.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the Marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell with your brand new evening show. It is fantastic to be in this slot. Thank you for everyone who's welcomed me to it. And there's so much to discuss, of course, with the Iran war affecting so many countries in the region and indeed our own country, because our Prime Minister has confirmed that our Air Force is acting defensively, but not part of the main action against Iran, attempting to topple their regime. President Trump says there are still attacks on Iran, on Tehran and Western Iran and various other parts of the country as well. We'll get the latest on all of that. We'll talk to someone in just a second who's a former Iranian political prisoner. We'll talk about what's at stake here and what she went through. We'll talk about the American angle with one of my favourite American political analysts. We'll talk about the whole region with a former ambassador to Yemen, Edmund Fitton Brown, who knows this stuff like the back of his hand. We'll talk as well about Shabana Mahmood fast-tracking immigration reforms. So those arriving in the UK after today will only be eligible for temporary refugee status. Could that be a game changer? We'll talk as well about the military aspect of all of this. And we'll talk about that dreadful knife attack in Edinburgh and what could happen here as a vigil to commemorate the murderous, evil tyrant Ali Khamenei. The Ayatollah is being held in Manchester on Wednesday. Clearly, that should be stopped immediately. So much to discuss here on Talk. We're going to do that between now and 10 o'clock. I want to get your voice on the air. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute, please, on the main number. You can send me a WhatsApp text message on the main number or give me a ring on the main number, which is, of course, 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss here on Talk. Let's get one of those voice notes. Dan has this to say on the UK's position on the war.
I think one of the fundamental reasons why Starmer's not allowing the US to use our bases for offensive purposes is he's trying to kick back. I think we've been frozen out of this conflict strategically and with intelligence by both Israel and the US. And can you really blame Israel? I mean, you only got to go back a few months when David Lammy was Foreign Secretary, who put everything in his power to stop the sale of armed components, and I think I'm right. Didn't he call for the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu?
He did previously before he was Foreign Secretary. You're right in that, Dan. They also, of course, recognised a state of Palestine, a Palestinian state. We're going to hear more from what Starmer's been saying today in a second, but first let's hear from the President himself, Donald Trump.
An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be a dire threat to every American. We cannot allow a nation that raises terrorist armies to possess such weapons, would allow them to extort the world to their evil will. Not going to let it happen. We're not happening to us, and we're not going to let it happen to others. We're undertaking this massive operation not merely to ensure security for our own time and place, but for our children and their children, just as our ancestors have done for us.
Donald Trump speaking there. The Prime Minister here in the United Kingdom talking in the House of Commons today, setting out the view of this country, or him as leader of this country, certainly on this conflict. This is what the Prime Minister said.
The US requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose, because they have the capabilities to do so. Yesterday evening, we took the decision to accept that new request in order to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved. To be clear, the use of British bases is limited to the agreed defensive purposes. We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review.
Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, speaking there. We've talked a lot about the politics of this. We've talked a lot about the geopolitical impact, about what Trump thinks, about what Starmer thinks, about what can happen, about the death, which I will not mourn for a second, of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. His wife has been murdered, well, it's been killed, not murdered, has been killed, as well as have many senior members of the Iranian regime. What we've got to remember in all of this is what's at stake here. Because Iran is run by a dreadful regime, a horrible, evil bunch of people. There are so many things they do that would just absolutely horrify you if I told you the detail, which I won't, because it's before the watershed and there could be children listening, and I want to be careful about that. What we do know is that they murder people, they put people in prison, they stop women's rights, and I wonder, and I often wonder, about the people who say they care about human rights in this country, people who really care about human rights, who say they're on pro-Palestinian marches, for example. Even people like Keir Starmer, who says, as a human rights lawyer, he says that human rights are his #1 motivating factor. Well, actually, what about the human rights of those people? What about those women who can't get an education? What about those women who aren't allowed to go out without wearing a veil or a headscarf? What about people who are put to death because they have been victims of rape? Horrendous, awful things that should never happen. One person who acts on behalf of them very, very bravely, who advocates for them at great personal risk, is someone who's been through some of the horrendous actions that the regime has visited on its own people. That is Shiva Mahmoudi. She is a former Iranian political prisoner who acts and is a fearless advocate for Iranians. Shiva, it's great to have you on the programme. Can you just tell me your thoughts today on day 3 of this? Because our viewers and listeners are coming to this. They're not experts, and neither am I, on the situation, on Iran. But what is at stake here, Shiva?
I think people's life in general, we know war is not good for people, of course. People in Iran knows that. But I guess what you mentioned previously, it seems like there is only one-sided narrative. Yes, they talk about the war, they talk about the attack on Iran, they talk about what impact has on the regime, but I don't hear really people or media or politicians talk about what's happening inside Iran. If it's okay, I want to give you a picture and your viewer or listener, and that is, we're not dealing with only a war, because it's different. If a country being attacked, usually the government of that country, they provide shelter, security, safety, and everything. In Iran, there is no shelter, there is no protection. Instead, IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which Keir Starmer hasn't put them on the list of terrorist organizations yet, they are patrolling all around across Iran in different cities. They're arresting people. You may not believe it. Even now, today I got a news that the IRGC sent SMS, the text message to people saying that, well, Khamenei has died, and if anyone come on the street and invoke any protests, they're gonna face with sort of suppression, I mean, in their own words.
Well, they've talked about those people being in control of foreign agents and so on, which they're absolutely not. They're simply people who want their rights.
Absolutely. Listen, I'm just one example of women who've been fighting all my life just to have a life worthy of a human being.
Tell us what happened to you, Shiva.
Well, when the regime took power, I want to just clarify something. The 1979 revolution, it was not an Islamic revolution. It was people's revolution against the dictatorship of Shah, but it was hijacked by the Islamists. Since then, I mean, they started suppressing women. I started my activity since I was 11 years old, because that's what happened.
What did you do? How did you resist?
Nothing really, because the fact that you're not obeying their rule, meaning you might wear your scarf, just a bit of your hair coming down, like Mahsa Jina Aminu, who were killed just because of part of her hair was out of the scarf. So you don't do anything really. It's a joke. When people say that, what did you do to end up in prison? I was part of students. We were against execution, we're for women's rights. nothing else really. When I was 12 years old, I was arrested because our schools were shut down by the regime. And we simply protested to say that we want our school back. And that's why I was arrested for 6 days. And that went on. I was arrested when I was 16 years old for 3 years and 4 months. Many of my friends were executed. So you have to remember that you can't just see this war. You have to put it in context. 47 years, almost half a century, people have fought for freedom, for the life that you guys have in the UK. People enjoyed in the UK, that's all. And for that, the brutality of the regime is so much that they've been killing constantly. So it makes sense now, the only way they stay on power is by arresting people, killing people inside, and also creating chaos in this, or they think it's a chaos.
When you were, Shiva, when you were in prison for 3 years and 4 months, what was that actually for? And tell me about the conditions you were held in.
I was a student activist. When you say student activist, meaning you say, I want my freedom. I don't want to be suppressed. That's all, nothing else. I was in solitary confinement sometimes for a month, at some point for 7 whole months. I was lashed, I was beaten up, I was deprived of having medication, I was deprived of having taking shower, everything you can imagine. And worse than that, you see your fellow prisoners dying in front of you. So I relate so much to this situation, because when I was in prison, it was in the time of war between Iran and Iraq. So I was left, let's say 17 years old, was left in solitary confinement. The guards would shut the door and they would go while the sirens were playing, and we were inside there. The only thing I was doing, I was going, sitting in a corner of my small cell, and I was holding my hand to my head. I didn't know what else to do when the walls were shaking. This is what exactly we heard today.
How did you get out of Iran?
Prison.
How did you get out of Iran?
Well, I left Iran because they wanted to arrest me again. So I left Iran. I went to Turkey through UNHCR and became an asylum seeker, because there were no way to stay. Many people, when they talk about refugees, they think they just come to other countries because they love to. No, I had to leave, because otherwise I would have been killed. So therefore I had to leave. So when I speak about prison, my experience multiplied by millions. In just recently, they raped women, they burned women, they mutilated women. No one pays attention to that. We're dealing with a regime that is like Hitler. All they talk about, it's about the attack. Fine. We don't want war, we don't want anything like that, but we're dealing with the regime. Right now inside Iran, to be honest, people are more scared of the regime than the attack. That's how they feel.
What are you thinking at the moment? Are you thinking, this is, obviously it's a wonderful thing that the Ayatollah is dead, but the regime is still there. This is a moment of great possibility, but there's a lot of jeopardy, and you must be worried about what exactly happens in the next few days.
Absolutely. Every single day, we all wake up with lots of worry to see what happened. One, there is a digital blackout, and we don't have any way to contact our family. That's one thing. Imagine if you don't know if they're alive or not. Secondly, as I said, we don't know what's happening, because some of the residential are near the IRGC places, because that's what they do. And apparently they even have meetings in the hospitals and schools, just like how they trained Hamas to do that. So therefore, it's really worrying. You don't know what's going to happen. But as I said, really my main worry, if you ask me, that the day that the Islamic regime knows that its last day, it's going to shoot people, it's going to basically massacre people.
So you're worried about the political prisoners now, and you worry the regime could kill them, murder them before it falls.
Absolutely, because according to the news just we got today and yesterday, they have been transferring political prisoners to unknown locations. In one of the prison, when they rioted, they tried to find some shelter. They beaten them up and they keep them in solitary confinement. So our worry really right now is that the first thing they do, they use political prisoners as human shield. They will take them to the IRGC bases, which they are doing it. When families are worried because if their kid's going to be taken to these IRGC places, either they shoot them or either they leave them to die. So that's how cruel they are. So when people, it makes me angry when people have only one narrative and they tell us, why you're happy Khamenei died? Look, I'm wearing semi-red color because I am so happy, because Khamenei is like a Hitler of Iran, and we all happy they died. We are happy that there is a targeted attack, because these people were untouchable. You know how many people cried when they attacked the IRGC places? I would hear people saying, young people saying, do you know that what happened to me in that IRGC place? I was tortured and raped.
Yeah.
Of course we're happy.
And I wonder what your message to Keir Starmer is in this country, because we've heard from him and he's somewhere in the middle, but he's certainly not for the attacks that the Americans and Israelis are putting forward. What would you say to him, and maybe to our viewers and listeners as well, who might be thinking, what should I think about this? What should my view be? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, regarding Keir Starmer, he's always in the middle. I mean, he has never done anything for people in Iran. Lindsay and Craig Foreman are British citizens, is inside Iran. What did they do to release them?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Iranian, I'm talking about British people.
Yes.
What did they do? Nothing. So they've always been in the middle. We keep saying that you need to shut down the regime's embassy. You need to kick out the regime's diplomat. You need to put the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard, on the list of terrorist organizations. They haven't done anything. So therefore, the question is that right now, we have to get the whole narrative. We have to put it in context. Right now, people in Iran are dealing with the regime that is the most brutal. What do we do to support people? And let me tell you something to all these people in Britain. Islamic regime is not a danger just for people in Iran. They had so many terrorist plots inside Britain. And the Foreign Office didn't do anything, actually. So the question is, how do we support people in Iran? By being their voice. When you are going to the hands of Iran, you need to say hands of people in Iran by the regime, basically. You need to ask the British government to shut down the regime's embassy. How can the regime embassy be open when in the last 2 months they killed more than 40,000 people? Does that mean anything to people? Can you imagine I'm asking everyone, can you imagine your son, your daughter goes on the march, and then after that, you don't know where they are. You go and the government tell you, go and open all those body bags. See if your son or daughter is there. And then you have to pay for the bullet that we shot your son or daughter. And then you find out they've been raped, they've been mutilated. How would you feel? This is what we're dealing with Iran. At this moment, my most fear, to be honest, is the regime killing all the political prisoners. And we don't know where they are. I need to ask people to appeal to their humanity, that put pressure on the British government. They need to shut down the regime's embassy. There is a message in that. The message in that we cannot tolerate it. But unfortunately, we don't see that. We've been talking to British government for years. You know what do they say? They say that we cannot close the embassy because there is no channel of negotiation. And you tell me, for the last 47 years old, what did they do? What did they achieve through
negotiation? It's a very, very fair point. A very fair point. And Shiva, you've spoken so eloquently and so convincingly and so movingly, actually, in the last 15 minutes. And I want to thank you for speaking to me, and I hope we speak again soon. That is Shiva Mahmoudi, their former Iranian political prisoner. What did you think about what she said? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. We'll get American reaction next. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Elisa in Chelmsford, who says, what a brilliant start to the show you had with Richard Kemp. He said, everything I feel, bravo, that man. Let's face it, Starmer is not fit for the position of Prime Minister. How many times did he emphasise the fact that we are not joining the US and Israeli airstrikes? He kept saying it to appease the Israel-hating voters, says Elisa. He cares not a jot for the people of Iran. It's like watching an HBO series that someone has got to him. He's weak, he's spineless, and as Prime Minister he has put us all in danger. I don't trust him or Lord Hermer, the Attorney General. Whilst the Persian people have an opportunity to rise up, we in the UK are seeing the beginnings of 1979. I pray to God that this incompetent government be removed from power in the near future for all our sakes, and that the Green Party get nowhere near power. I stand with America and Israel, who are doing the dirty work on behalf of the rest of us. Tad says, should we ever forget how dangerous religious fundamentalists are? We need look no further than the evil regime in Iran. Yet domestic politicians in the UK seem to want to pack our once green and pleasant land with the same tyrants. I say good riddance. I believe that essentially Trump prefers peace, but as Eisenhower famously said, just because one side wants peace doesn't make peace. Nutcases have to be dealt with, and as Iran supporters clearly show, there's still plenty of work to do. On Iran, I'm glad that at long last the US has cut the head off the snake. I just worry it could turn into a multi-headed hydra. Well, let's talk about the United States now with Michael Yaki. He's a US political analyst, former senior advisor to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. Michael, great to have you on the programme. What is your view of what Trump has done?
Always glad to see you, Peter. Well, I mean, this is interesting. He's basically single-handedly, without any consultation with Congress, not even his own speaker, put the U.S. into essentially what's going to be what is a war. And the Congress will have to say on this, as they did in the Gulf in 91 and 2003. But, this is one of those things where you just hope for, as an American, I hope for the best, but you have to prepare for the worst, because this is a country where even though we decapitated, as that one viewer said, the head of the snake, it doesn't mean that 5 more may not pop up. And it seems like they have a succession plan in place, and these people are not going to be gathering together anytime soon, so that we get a second shot at them.
What is Congress likely to say? How are people likely to react? We saw how divided it was on a domestic issue on immigration at the State of the Union a few days ago. We talked about that. How likely are they to be united, divided? What do you think their thoughts on this military action will be?
It's going to be pretty divided, and I think it's going to cut both ways in terms of Democrats and Republicans. You have a lot of Republicans who are concerned about the fact that this may be the beginning of a land war. You have Democrats who are convinced this is going to be the beginning of the land war. Then you also have some Democrats and Republicans who feel like this is a country that has caused innumerable harm to a lot of people in the West, especially America, beginning from 1979 until now. And at some point, this is action that seemed inevitable, so why not do it now? But the question is, it seemed inevitable for a long time already.
Well, you're right, actually, Mike. You're right, Michael. Sorry to interrupt you, but I remember seeing something on Twitter over the weekend about, it was a picture of Rumsfeld and Condoleezza Rice and George W. Bush and Dick Cheney saying, 20 years ago they wanted to do this. John McCain got into trouble on the campaign trail in 2008 for singing "Bomb, Bomb, Bomb Iran" to the tune of the Beach Boys. This is something that has been in the political mind's eye for a quarter of a century. Now it's finally happened. I wonder why you think it's happened from an American political perspective.
Well, from a political perspective, I'm not sure why it happened, other than I think that Donald Trump believes that what he did in Venezuela, and he keeps on talking about Venezuela, that a decapitation can actually incur some kind of regime change, not really regime as in the entire government, but in terms of their attitude toward the United States and willingness to cooperate. Here we see that Iran has lashed out and lashed back across the entire Middle East. The Straits of Hormuz is in danger. We saw that Qatar, the biggest LNG facility in the world, has shut down, and the natural gas futures, including for the UK, have shot up 50%. I mean, this is something where I think the gaming of this out over the years has always come to the conclusion we don't know what Iran is going to do, but it could be very bad. And I think we're looking at some of that gaming out scenarios right now, in that it's not just a simple, get rid of the Ayatollah. Everything's going to be wine and roses.
Is there a day two plan that people have talked about? Is there any suggestion from what Trump has said, or anything you've been hearing in the media or by political people in the White House or Congress about what support could look like afterwards? Because so many people fear that actually, given Afghanistan, given Iraq, yes, by all means get rid of the regime. Certainly in Iran I will shed no tears for the Ayatollahs. I'm sure very, very few Americans would. But what happens next?
I mean, look at the situation in Afghanistan. We went in there and we ended up handing it all back to the Taliban.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what people are concerned about. And what is concerning, at least to a lot of Americans, because a majority of them right now do not support what happened, despite the fact that, like all of us, I think every single one of us is glad at some of the results that occurred. But the longer term, the issues that we're all concerned about, has to deal with the fact that we don't know what is going to happen. We know that there are protests on the streets, but that doesn't necessarily translate into anyone having an army or the weapons necessary to take over the regime again. So this is where I think America is going to be divided. I think Congress is going to be divided. In the end, it's going to be very hard for Congress not to support the troops in the field. That's always been either you call it the easy way out or the excuse you fall back on. But the fact is that it may be a little bit different because this is all in the air. And this is all air power going on.
Yes.
There are troops on the ground.
That's different, isn't it? That's a different scenario.
Yeah, when you're going house to house in Fallujah, it's a whole different scenario than when you're up and so far the only planes shot down were where the Kuwaitis with their fingers on the trigger shot down some guys who were probably in a landing scenario. I mean, this is going to be a little bit different, but the stakes are very high. The country is very divided. In the end, will they support it? Yes, but the fact is that when the president has switched his goals in the span of 48 hours from regime change to, well, now we just want to stop them from doing X, Y, and Z from occurring. The same things, by the way, every president has talked about for the last 40 years. Again, what made Saturday the day to do it? And I think part of it is that someone saw the opportunity to take out as many of the leadership as they could, and they took it. But having done that, that could be a good end result in and of itself. To go further and say, well, we're going to try and institute regime change, that's going to be a lot harder to do. And you see right now that with our continued avowing of escalation, Iran has escalated back and drawing into the conflict the entire Middle East. So, this is kind of scary times for everyone. It seems far away. It seems very far away from the UK, and I actually think that Starmer's position for the UK right now is the right thing to do.
Why do you think that?
Well, because I don't know if what Trump is doing is the right thing to have done.
But what makes you convinced? But what makes you convinced that Starmer is doing the right thing for this country?
Well, because I think that right now he's doing I think what he should be doing, which is the U.S. asked after the attack, after their counterattack by Iran, can we use the bases? It's hard to say no to our special partner, right? It's one of those things where if the shoe were on the other foot, we would be obliged, and I think we should want to help the UK out. But I think that the UK taking the position of we're going to act defensively.
Yeah.
And there's kind of and Peter, you and I both know that the line between offense and defense is a kind of a blurry one at best. But at least to say defensively, to protect their interests and protect their citizens is a good standpoint right now. But I'm not sure if a big war is in the West's interest, is in America's interest, or is in the UK's interest.
Okay. Michael, thank you, as always. Michael Yaki, US political analyst, former senior advisor to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. The first voice I think we've heard, apart from one of our callers earlier on, saying that Starmer is done the right thing. What do you think about what Michael said? 0344 499 1000. That's certainly not something that Nigel would agree with. He says, you're right, Keir Starmer is somewhere around the middle. He is not on the side of Trump and Israel. They need to keep far, far away from our government. On Shiva, who we spoke to a minute ago, Shiva was excellent. Brutal truth spoken calmly, says this message. A short message, but a powerful one there, so thank you for that. Paula says, thank you for having Shiva on your show as usual. You allow guests to share stories which bring a tear to my eyes. A very brave lady, but also sharing the true story of this brutal regime. God bless the Iranian people, and may their freedom be near. Please, can you have her back on as this unfolds? Paula, we're absolutely going to have her back on. She was a brilliant speaker, and I definitely want to hear what she thinks of all the developments that are happening. Dee in Chesterfield, I'm in tears after hearing that wonderful Shiva lady. We just don't appreciate the freedom in the UK, but for how long? Action should have been taken years ago. The Israelis have had more compassion on the Muslim people in Iran than many people have had towards them, for example, regarding what happened with the Manchester synagogue. Steve in Barnet says, Starmer should remember our ally America came to World War II, and if it wasn't for them, we might all be speaking German now. Paul in Kent says, would now be a good time to call a national emergency just to be on the safe side, says Paul. Well, I don't think we're quite there yet, and I hope we don't get there, certainly. We're going to hear from another brilliant analyst, Edmund Fitton-Brown, former US ambassador to Yemen. He knows the region like the back of his hand, and he's been on the right side of history, certainly in the wake of the 7th of October. All of this comes together. All of this relates, and for the last 2.5 years, mainly on the weekend programmes, but some weekday programmes as well, I've been talking about this region. Where does Hamas get its funding? Iran. Where does Hezbollah get its funding? Iran. They're state-sponsored. They're sponsored by the state of Iran. If Iran and the Iranian regime can go, well, what possibility there could be in the Middle East? I'm going to talk to Edmund Fitton-Brown in just a second. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's speak now to Edmund Fitton-Brown, former UK ambassador to Yemen. Edmund, great to have you back on my programmes. I just want to ask you about, very straightforwardly, your reaction to what has happened today. Not just in regard to America, but also our own Prime Minister here in the United Kingdom talking to Parliament. I just want to play a quick clip of him before I get your reaction. This is Keir Starmer talking about using UK bases defensively, but not in regard to joining the Israeli and US attacks on Iran. This is what the Prime Minister said earlier today.
We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review. Mr. Speaker, we are not joining the strikes, but we will continue our defensive actions in the region.
Edmund, your view?
Well, it's a little disappointing. It feels lukewarm, and there are some understandable suspicions that are being expressed that he's trying to have it both ways, to look as if the UK is a good ally to the US, but not to offend any particular constituencies. In my view, the fact that the Iranians have regularly attacked a number of our allies in the region who were not in any way involved in the US or Israeli strikes on Iran actually gives us enough cover to enter the conflict on the side of the United States. I wish we would do that. I think they'll manage without us, though.
It's interesting you talk about international law, and Sarmer talks about international law there. Essentially, you can get a legal opinion that will tell you whatever you want. That is, a skilled lawyer can essentially do that, especially when it comes to international law, especially when Trump is arguing that this is a defensive war. What is your view on, and not necessarily talking about the niceties or the nuances of international law per se, but do you see this as a defensive war, Edmund?
Well, it's certainly a defensive war from Israel's point of view, and I think one of the original sins that's in play here is that people had normalized the way that the Islamic Republic of Iran was behaving, but it's really been in a state of undeclared war with us ever since its inception, ever since the taking of American diplomatic hostages in Tehran, ever since they launched the bounty on the head of Salman Rushdie, ever since they killed large numbers of American troops and British troops in Iraq. And so, you know, they were talking in explicit terms over decades about death to America. And I think we have to stop normalizing that. We have to stop accepting that any country is able to do that, and you can still talk about them not being a threat. Now, from Israel's point of view, it's that much more obvious. The Americans, at least, can say that they're not being directly threatened right now by the Iranians. In the case of Israel, Iran has talked about wiping Israel off the face of the earth, and it has actively sought the means to do so. And in those circumstances, it is, in my view, from the Israeli point of view, this is a defensive war. In the US case, I suppose you would probably call it a preemptive war.
When you talk, I mean, you mentioned there about Keir Starmer and his thoughts about particular constituencies. Let's just call this what it is. He's worried about the Muslim vote, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
And what should he do? How should he not worry about that? I mean, that may well be a political consideration, but the point is you're meant to do the right thing here, and you're meant to have leadership here. If you were an ambassador, if you were a senior person in the Foreign Office, what advice would you be giving him right now?
Yeah, I would certainly have been advising him to be much more robust about this. And the strange thing is, of course, that he ought to be more confident than he is. He's got a large enough majority in the Parliament to face down some rebels. And of course, when under the Biden administration, you'll remember that the UK got involved in the task force that was deployed to face down the Houthis in the Red Sea. And that didn't lead to any great civil unrest in the UK. There was plenty of civil unrest going on, but that was all linked directly to Gaza. And actually, the UK's participation in the Red Sea operation was an entirely positive experience. It was also a cross-party experience. You know, it was Sunak who launched it, and then Starmer who continued it, and neither of them sought to undermine the other. So I don't understand this sort of loss of confidence. I can only assume that this is affecting him because Labour has had so much bad news recently.
You touched on it slightly in that answer, but I wonder if you could perhaps expand on it. You're an expert in the region, and I want you to just tell me a little bit, and tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about how important Iran is as a regional player. Bring it back to the 7th of October. Talk about Hamas, talk about Hezbollah, talk about the Houthis as well, and just tell us a little bit, maybe to our viewers and listeners who aren't experts. I'm certainly not an expert. I'm interested, but I'm certainly not an expert. You are. Tell us why this is linked, why the last 2.5 years have perhaps, and longer, have perhaps been leading to this moment.
Absolutely. So Iran is the spider at the center of an Islamic extremist web in the Middle East region, but also with its ambitions and its tentacles outside the region. And they have a number of proxy militias that fight on their behalf. And those, most notably, those include Lebanese Hezbollah and they include the Yemeni Houthis. But there are others as well. And Hamas, the Palestinian terrorist group, in spite of not being a Shia Muslim group, it's actually a Sunni Muslim group. It's had long-standing close relations with the Iranians, and the Iranians have provided it with finance and training. So when Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th of October 2023, that was to some degree part of an Iranian strategy to defeat Israel.
Yes, and all of that, and so much of it has stemmed from there. What do you think about the stability? It's hard to tell, of course, and this is maybe an unfair question, but what is your view about the stability of the regime in Iran at the moment?
No, I think it's a perfectly fair question, Peter. I think the stability of the regime is very shaky indeed. They were in desperate trouble in January in the face of mass popular protests throughout Iran. In every city in Iran, every region of Iran, you had hundreds of thousands, and I think at the peak, millions of people out on the streets. You had a number of members of the regime, police and IRGC figures, surrendering to the mob. The mob being how they would see it, but you know, the crowds, the protesters.
Edmund, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just hold tight for a second. We're going to go and hear a little bit about what Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is saying on Capitol Hill right now. I'll get your reaction in a second. Let's hear from Marco Rubio.
We would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act. Going back to the purpose. The purpose of this is to destroy that missile capability. Why does Iran want that ballistic missile capability? What they are trying to do, and have been trying to do for a very long time, is build a conventional weapons capability as a shield where they can hide behind. Meaning, there would come a point where they have so many conventional missiles, so many drones, and it can inflict so much damage that no one can do anything about their nuclear program. That is what they were trying to do, is put themselves in a place of immunity where the damage they could inflict on the region would be so high that no one can do anything about their nuclear program or their nuclear ambitions. They are producing, by some estimates, over 100 of these missiles a month. Compare that to the 6 or 7 interceptors that can be built a month. They can build 100 of these a month, not to mention the thousands of one-way attack drones that they also have. They've been doing this for a very long time, and by the way, they've been doing it under sanction. You see the attacks they're conducting right now? They're attacking airports, they're attacking hotels, they're hitting not just military bases, they're attacking our embassies directly, they're attacking facilities that have nothing to do with war or with military, and that's a weakened Iran. That's in Iran despite years of sanction. Imagine a year from now, or a year and a half from now, the capabilities they would have to inflict damage on us. It's an unacceptable risk, especially in the hands of a regime that's run by radical clerics. The Ayatollah was a radical cleric. That entire regime is led by radical clerics who don't make geopolitical decisions. They make decisions on the basis of theology, their view of theology, which is an apocalyptic one. That has to be taken very seriously as well. So that was the purpose for what this operation is all about. That's what it's focused on. As the President said earlier today, it is on or ahead of schedule. I will defer to the Department of War to discuss the progress being made at a tactical level, but it was the right decision and an important decision for the safety and security of the world.
Does Congress have to weigh in? Is the President declaring war? Does Congress have to weigh in? And was there an imminent threat? Did you tell lawmakers that there was an imminent threat?
There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths. We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage. Had we not done so, there would have been hearings on Capitol Hill about how we knew that this was going to happen, and we didn't act preemptively to prevent more casualties and more loss of life.
The U.S. was forced to strike because of an impending Israeli action?
No, let me two things I would say. Number one is, no matter what, ultimately this operation needed to happen. That's the question of why now. But this operation needed to happen because Iran in about a year or a year and a half would cross the line of immunity, meaning they would have so many short-range missiles, so many drones, that no one could do anything about it because they could hold the whole world hostage. Look at the damage they're doing now. And this is a weakened Iran. Imagine a year from now. So that had to happen. Obviously, we were aware of Israeli intentions and understood what that would mean for us, and we had to be prepared to act as a result of it. But this had to happen no matter what.
Marco Rubio there, the Secretary of State, the Foreign Secretary, essentially, of America, taking questions from reporters, giving us an update. Edmund Fitton-Brown still with us, and thank you for your patience. Edmund, what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, it was fascinating to see. I think Marco Rubio speaks very well. He's on top of his brief, and he certainly understands the full strategic imperative that the US has been fulfilling here. Nevertheless, you can see that there's going to be some skepticism in the US, and this is largely to do with the US system and the extent to which the Trump administration has short-circuited it. But I don't think that directly concerns us.
Edmund, thank you, and thank you for your patience. Edmund Fitton-Brown there, the former UK ambassador to Yemen. We'll check in with him again soon, I hope. Lots to discuss on all of this. 0344 499 1000. There's so much on Iran that we will discuss between now and 10 o'clock. But I also want to talk about one domestic story, which is Shabana Mahmood fast-tracking immigration reforms, so those arriving in the UK after today only eligible for temporary refugee status. We'll talk to former Immigration Minister Kevin Foster about that in just a second. We'll take more of your calls, text, tweets and voice notes. The main number, of course, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Just a bit of extra news. Israel's military has said that it struck Hezbollah targets in Lebanon after the Iranian-backed Shia group said it launched rockets and drones at the Israeli city of Haifa to avenge the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Lebanon's health ministry said 31 people were killed by Israeli strikes in Beirut, southern suburbs, where Hezbollah has a strong presence. There were no reports of casualties in Israel from Hezbollah's fire, which the group said was retaliation.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who's been in touch. We'll get back to Iran in a minute, but I just want to spend a few minutes talking about a domestic political story. The Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood fast-tracking immigration reforms, so those arriving in the UK after Monday will only be eligible for temporary refugee status. This is the right to permanent asylum in the UK scrapped in the most significant overhaul of immigration policy in a generation, the Home Office says. The Home Secretary changing the rules so migrants arriving in the UK only eligible for temporary refugee status as part of those sweeping reforms. We've heard a lot about this before, but will it work? Kevin Foster is the former Immigration Minister for the Conservatives and joins me now. Let me just ask that question to you, Kevin. Will it work?
Yeah, it'll certainly have an impact. It's something we looked and actually legislated for doing back in 2022 in the Nationality and Borders Act. It's all part of removing that incentive to basically pay a people trafficker, get yourself to the UK, and then get an immigration status as a result. So no, she's right to it. She's also right to do it with short notice as well, because what you don't want is a longer period of notice that creates a closing down sale effect where lots of people try and get into the country before it comes into effect. So that's why she's right to announce that it'll come into effect within a week rather than, say, let's say next month.
It's a broken system. It's really tearing communities apart. It'll cost us a lot of public confidence in the state's ability to do anything at all. So we need to make these changes for the state of the country. How will it actually work? That's what Shabana Mahmood thinks. But practically, Kevin, how will it work?
Well, practically, it reflects what we've seen in some other countries. I think Denmark is the example she's been citing, where rather than someone getting an asylum claim and then after a few years being able to apply for permanent settlement, they're constantly reviewed. Now, you might think, well, what impact would that actually have? So let's say, for example, 30 years ago, you and I will remember, just about, Peter, if you're a little bit younger than me, the situation in Yugoslavia. Well, at that time, people could get asylum from somewhere like Croatia. There was a war on. Well, clearly now, Croatia is a member of the EU. It's a country that's perfectly peaceful, and many people watching this show would happily take a holiday to. So if you've got permanently temporary status, then, of course, someone who perhaps claimed asylum in the mid-90s, by about 10, 15 years later, when Croatia was joining the EU, would have perhaps found themselves being told, actually, your home country is perfectly safe now for you to return to. So that's the sort of practical effect this type of change has.
Yes, and very interesting on that. I just wonder, I mean, if there, I was often be told if there's a consensus, it is wrong. Are there people who are against this? Are there people who think, well, clearly the left will say this is unfair, or that we should be bringing in asylum seekers left, right and centre? I just wonder whether you think it will lead to a lower number of people coming to this country and get a grip on the immigration system.
It'll have some effect, but it's got to be part of a wider package. And actually, to be fair to the Home Secretary today, she said, you know, there's no silver bullet, there's no one magic solution. She's absolutely right to say that. You know, we've seen too many in the past say, for example, her predecessor thought smashing the gangs would solve the problem. And it's also worth saying that perhaps under the Conservative government, particularly Mr. Sunak's time, there was every so often a new thing that apparently was going to solve the whole problem. Well, you need a wider strategy. That's what you need. This is part of it, reducing the incentives to come. This is what this falls under. But you still need to, yes, do law enforcement work. You need to do your work around working with other countries. But also you are going to have that decision of how you remove people from the country, particularly from countries that you're unlikely to be able to send people back to, either due to the situation there or due to a government just point blank refusing. And we don't have that many levers. You know, we don't do that much trade with places like Eritrea, for example.
Kevin Foster, thank you. Former Immigration Minister Kevin Foster, appreciate him joining the programme. I just want to hear a voice note from Tristan on Starmer.
With this absolute craven way that Keir Starmer's going through to protect this Muslim vote is not only cowardly, not only it's a disgrace, but he's lying again. When he first came into this premiership, he kept saying he will put country before party. Now, in this situation, as regards to on a war footing, he is still putting party before country. It absolutely defines the absolute disgrace of a man he really is. And to be honest with you, a threat to this country in more ways than one. I'm speechless, to be honest with you, when I keep hearing those two words, international law.
Tristan, thank you. Let's go to Grace in London. She's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Grace, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say this evening?
I'm obviously thrilled that the Ayatollah is gone, and I'm really hoping that things ultimately get better for the Iranian people. But I'm kind of concerned that Trump's priority is actually just to get attention for himself, or to have attention taken away from some of the things that aren't going so great for him.
Surely there's more than that behind this, Grace.
A lot of the comments that he's made seem to suggest that he thinks he's got some kind of... He used the word righteous. he seems to think that because he's on the side of good, he can do whatever he likes, and there's not so much attention to long-term strategy or concern for the people of Iran as I would really like to see.
Although he did say help was on the way, and that took longer, I think, than it should have. I just wonder what the plan should be, because if they're going to replace the regime, what should come next? I mean, ideally, in my mind, democracy. What about you, Grace?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But it'd be good to see Trump kind of prioritising supporting democracy rather than. I feel like he's kind of trying to show off, and that
it's more than that, Grace, is it not? This is far more important than the ego of one man, is it not?
Well, it is, but I don't know if it necessarily is to Trump, given things.
Does that matter? If the Iranian people get freedom, does the ego of the president matter?
No, it doesn't. But what I'm saying is I don't think that he's necessarily paying enough strategy to the long-term situation. I mean, I heard one of your guests earlier mention the original sin of accepting what Iran is doing. And, of course, the Iranian leadership thinks that they can punish people for their sins. And in the West, we have a very different idea whereby it's not actually the case that we should just have a theocracy.
Grace, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We just got to go to the news. We'll talk again very soon, I hope, Grace, but you made some really interesting points there. We're going to talk to Simon Diggins in a minute, the military expert, Colonel Simon Diggins. He's going to give us his view. Tell me yours, 0344 499 1000.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defense of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the Marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence System.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Qatar says it has shot down 2 Iranian warplanes. We know that this region is being attacked by Iran. The US and Israel are attacking Iran too. This is day 3 of this major conflict which is affecting us here in the UK and indeed around the world. I want your views on that. We'll get some experts, we'll get some people who know the military, we'll talk about what's happening in this country with political violence here and the absolutely disgraceful scenes we have seen already. Also, in the Islamic Centre of Manchester, an entity reportedly linked to the Islamic regime's supreme leader, a vigil to commemorate Khamenei being held in Manchester on Wednesday. How on earth can that be able to go ahead? Lord Walney, the former government advisor on political violence, coming up. I want your views on all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute, please. 0344 499 1000. That's the number for calls. That's the number for WhatsApp text messages as well. I'll try and get as many calls as I can on in a very busy hour between now and 10 o'clock. Thank you so much for welcoming me to the slot. Let's get started with the final hour of this first programme on evenings. Stay with us here on Talk. I want to go through what the political leaders are saying, not just in this country, but in America too. Let's hear what the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has been saying.
An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be a dire threat to every American. We cannot allow a nation that raises terrorist armies to possess such weapons, would allow them to extort the world to their evil will. Not going to let it happen. We're not happening to us, and we're not going to let it happen to others. We're undertaking this massive operation not merely to ensure security for our own time and place, but for our children and their children, just as our ancestors have done for us.
Donald Trump speaking there. Let's hear what Keir Starmer has said to Parliament this afternoon.
The US requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose because they had the capabilities to do so. Yesterday evening, we took the decision to accept that new request in order to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved. To be clear, the use of British bases is limited to the agreed defensive purposes. We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review.
The Leader of the Opposition, Kemp, had many questions for the Prime Minister.
Why is it that under this Prime Minister, international law always seems to be at odds with our national interest? Why is it that we are giving away the Chagos Islands and paying £35 billion for the privilege rather than standing up for our national interest and protecting the crucial military base, which even now our allies are using? We in this House are elected to stand up for Britain's national interest, and where the government is doing the right thing, we will always back them. So let me reiterate our offer that if the government brings forward legislation to fast-track banning the IRGC, we will support them. But let me ask the Prime Minister, what national interest was served by refusing to help our allies for so long, particularly when we so need American support to protect Ukraine's and Europe's security?
Kemp speaking there. Nigel Farage as well at a press conference asked by our reporter Samara Gill about whether if he was Prime Minister, he would have allowed our bases to be used in the original attacks. This is how he answered Samara.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this. Whether this does go to a debate or a vote in the House of Commons, we will have to see. But as I say, British sovereign territory is under attack. We have, I don't think, really very much choice.
Nigel Farage speaking there. Let's talk about the military aspect and the geopolitical aspect of this with my favourite military and defence analyst, Colonel Simon Diggins, who's with me now. Simon, from what Keir Starmer is saying there, I wonder whether you feel that the United Kingdom is doing the right thing in support of the United States and what Israel is doing in regard to Iran.
Peter, good evening to you. I think it's a little bit too late. I'm pleased that we now have agreed to let the bases being used for what they regard as defensive operations. But I think what's so sad about this whole performance by Keir Starmer and his crew is the non-recognition of our national interest. The regime that Donald Trump and the Israelis have attacked is a regime that's killed British soldiers. They're responsible for the majority of the deaths of British soldiers in Iraq after 2004, has murdered its own people, anything between 6,000 and 30,000. It blinds female opposition for one, though, and it hangs rape victims. I mean, the national interest and international law are really are very distinct things here. This regime is an absolute menace to the world, and allowing them to acquire nuclear weapons, which they were on a trajectory to do, is something we should have been absolutely square behind the Americans to try and stop. So I'm pleased that there's been a change or partial change of heart within 10 Downing Street, but I remain completely disappointed by this failure to recognise where our true national interest lies.
He is hiding, some would argue, behind international law. Is that a reasonable argument?
No, because other countries, like, for example, America and Israel, also obey the international law. And regardless, if international law permits the regime of the same scale as Iran, in doing what Iran has just done, then I would say bluntly that international law is not fit for purpose. Interestingly, I actually think it probably is. I mean, during the 1999, Sir Tony Blair, previous Labour Prime Minister, articulated the responsibility to protect. I think that responsibility to protect, particularly the Iranian citizens, has long since reached the threshold. So I'm really surprised by their decision. I can only assume that for whatever reason they weren't prepared to go along with Donald Trump. But I think actually they could easily have found a reasonable justification for doing so. But regardless, morality is more important than law. And in this case, I think the morality is entirely on the side of Donald Trump and Israel in dealing with this regime.
I agree with you, Simon, but what would you say to those who disagree with that argument and say the threshold of responsibility to protect has been exceeded in so many parts of the world, and we can't save everybody?
And you really can't, and that's fair. I mean, you can't save everybody, but I mean, our national interest is now engaged. We've got 100,000 plus British citizens in and around the Gulf. There's been an attack on our sovereign bases in Cyprus, and there always was going to be. So absolutely accept the responsibility to protect means you can't necessarily go everywhere. But here is absolutely a key part of our national interest. We have long-standing relations with the countries in the Gulf and in the Middle East, and we should be protecting that. That's what national interest is all about. Of course, if you can, be a white knight and gallop around the world dealing with all the bad bastards who are out there. But sometimes you can't. You've got to pick your enemy.
Yeah, it's interesting you mention that, Simon. I just wonder whether you feel where this goes now, essentially, and whether you think there'll be American boots on the ground in this.
I think they'll be very reluctant to put boots on the ground, certainly in the kind of numbers and scale that was there before. I mean, of course, there are different sorts of boots on the ground. Special forces, espionage, all those sort of elements are there. And there's the whole kind of dark black arts of kind of cyber information operations where it's not clear whether you're boots on the ground or not, but you're having direct control and effect of what is happening. There's also indications, for example, particularly in Iranian Kurdistan, of groups organising themselves there in order to overthrow the regime in their part of Iran. And so I think that's what the real boots on the ground is going to be, is whether the coalition at the moment of the Israelis and the Americans can do sufficient to write down particularly the IRGC, and take and remain any remaining credible bits of the sort of civil government, such that the people of Iran, the oppressed people of Iran, feel confident enough to rise up again against what I suspect and fear will be a very bloody attempt to repress them from the remnants of the IRGC. But it's whether or not they, with the destruction of the IRGC's main structure, its leadership, and its command and control, its ammunition stocks, that the Iranian people then feel able to rise up and get rid of them completely.
I asked Edmund Fitton-Brown this question a little bit earlier on, the former ambassador to Yemen for the UK. How fragile do you think the regime is? Because they fill these roles very quickly. Of course, it's a huge powerful regime in Iran, how quickly could it be toppled in your view?
It's a tough question to answer.
Yes.
What I do know is that the IRGC have got themselves well dug in. I mean, they're not just as the name suggests, a guard corps, a kind of paramilitary force. They have themselves integrated into all sorts of parts of the establishment. Nonetheless, the experience of a lot of these authoritarian regimes, and we can look across just over the border into both Iraq and into a bit further afield into Syria, is actually they're often very fragile. So they've got this very strong carapace, and they appear to be very strong on the outside. Tap them hard enough, and the carapace shatters, and that may well be the case with the IRGC in Iran.
We're just getting some breaking news. I will tell you as soon as I can. 6 service members, US 6 service members killed in Iranian operation. I think that's just a recent line, and we will of course bring you more on that when we can. Simon, just a final question to you. From the UK military's perspective, if Starmer changes his mind, if Parliament changes its mind, do we have the capability to get involved?
We do. We have got aircraft who could be employed. We've got submarines. We've got cruise missiles. We have all sorts of things we can do and aid the effort. And it's a political decision now whether or not we do. But of course we do.
Okay,
Simon. Not at the scale we need, but we do.
Simon, thank you as always. I appreciate your contribution. Simon Diggins there, Colonel Simon Diggins, military and defence analyst, former senior officer, of course, in the UK military. Kiva is in Belfast and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Kiva, I understand this is the first time you've called us here at Talk, and I want to welcome you and say thank you for that call. What would you like to say?
Hi, I just kind of want to give the perspective on this as like a young person. So I'm 18, which basically means now I can vote in the general elections, which is something I've been really wanting to do for a long time. This is my first time ever calling. I've been watching the BBC for the last couple of hours, and it's not showing me what I want to see, and I wanted to see more coverage on this, so I came on to your channel to basically get more input. I have the perspective of I'm more worried about actually going to war. And I know Keir Starmer has said repeatedly that he's not going to do it, but I mean, we've seen how quickly him and his government constantly backtrack on what they promise, on what they say, on everything. And all it takes would be if Donald Trump decided to invoke Article 5 of NATO, which would mean an attack against one is an attack against all. And that's terrifying. Do you know what I mean? Like, so many young people nowadays, I don't think have fully grasped not the attention, but the severity of war. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we've seen Ukraine and Russia, and we've seen, most people remember the Syrian war as well and what happened over there. But actually seeing this now, it's terrifying, because we don't have a government who are stable enough or strong enough to actually act together.
What do you think they should do? Imagine you could talk to Keir Starmer right now, Kiva. What would you say to him? Because I just wonder what you think about this action overall. Do you think it's the right thing? And what would you say to him?
I would tell him to grow a backbone, if I'm brutally honest with you.
But if he grows the backbone, what should he do when he has it?
I think he should just start being honest about what he actually wants to do. Like, when obviously he was not in power when Russia and Ukraine went to war, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have an older brother who used to be a former service member, and he put in his withdrawal from the army days before Russia invaded Ukraine, but it hadn't been processed fully. And those few days when we didn't know what was fully going to happen were probably the most terrifying in my life, because I didn't know if we were going to go to war. I didn't know if my big brother was going to be sent off to fight someone else's war. And it was terrifying.
Is this someone else's war, or is it the case that there are people... You're 18 years old, I understand?
Yeah.
There are women who are 18, there are women who are 15 and 16 in Iran who have been raped, and they have been executed because they have committed adultery in the view of their regime. I mean, that's a regime I want to get rid of. But I suppose the question, Kiva, which you're raising, is at what cost to us here?
There's so many different push and pull factors as to why maybe we should be doing something and maybe why we shouldn't be doing something. Honestly, I'm more of a left-leaning person. I don't agree with everything on the right. I don't agree with a lot of liberal policies either. I do like to specify when I talk about that, I'm not a liberal. I hate it when people get that mixed up. I'm a leftist, so I don't believe in all liberal policies because I think some liberal policies are not great.
What are you doing with your life, Kiva? Are you at school? Are you at university? What are you doing?
I'm at college.
Okay. And are you studying politics?
Yeah.
I thought you might be. Kiva, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Please ring me anytime. And whatever you think about what we're talking about, whether you think we're talking sense or whether you think we're talking absolute nonsense, just let me know anytime. But Kiva, I wish you well. And thanks for the call.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, that's Kiva in Belfast there. Thank you to Terry. He says, no nodding along with Starmer by Yvette Cooper, I notice. And Connor is in Wakefield, another Irish name, from Kiva to Connor. Connor, what do you make of what's going on? What are your thoughts?
Oh, hi, buddy. Yeah, enjoying your show as well.
Thank you.
Good. It's just crazy, isn't it, really? I mean...
Is it the right thing? Are we doing the right thing?
See, the Starmer thing, I mean, I'm nowhere near Starmer's biggest fan, but I agree with him not going in straight away, but it's the way it's... Oh, my sound gone?
No, I can hear you, Connor. Go ahead.
Sweet. Yeah, I agree with not going in straight away, but it's the way it's come about for him. He's not done it because he don't... You know, it's... like the Green Party going into Manchester and all, it's to save his office, really.
Do you think he's still making up his mind, or is he trying to have it both ways? I mean, he's somewhere in the middle here, isn't he?
Well, I thought of this really early. Obviously, Iran and China have been, you know, quite good friends in the past, and obviously we've got that new Chinese embassy in London.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a strange one for me. But yeah, it's everything he does. Ideally, we should have gone in with America and Israel, obviously. But why would Donald Trump tell him? Well, you know, ask him to do anything after everything that's happened in the past, you know, couple of months and stuff like the Chinese embassy and you know,
Well, those are interesting and valid points, Connor, and I appreciate that. Thanks. That's Connor in Wakefield there. We're going to go to a break now, but I'm going to speak in just a second to Peter Blexley. This is about another domestic story. We're mainly focusing, of course, on Iran for the vast majority of this programme, but there's been a horrendous knife attack in Edinburgh. Armed cops swarming a city street after multiple people stabbed by a man spotted carrying 2 large knives. Peter Blexley, our crime commentator, will bring us the latest on all of that horrendous incident in Edinburgh today. I also want to thank everybody who's been welcoming me to the slot. I don't want to be too self-indulgent and read these things out too much, but very interesting from Aggie. He says, best of luck with your new evening slot. I've switched to talk from another station so I can listen to you. Great show as always. Thank you. I don't know what that other station is, but whatever it was, thank you so much for your loyalty, Aggie, and I hope that I can repay that loyalty. I'm here every night this week between 7 and 10. Peter Blexley next. Stay with us.
Just a bit of extra news. Israel's military has said that it struck Hezbollah targets in Lebanon after the Iranian-backed Shia group said it launched rockets and drones at the Israeli city of Haifa to avenge the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Lebanon's health ministry said 31 people were killed by Israeli strikes in Beirut, southern suburbs, where Hezbollah has a strong presence. There were no reports of casualties in Israel from Hezbollah's fire, which the group said was retaliation.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let me just bring you up to date with what is happening with the war on Iran. The Israeli military has told Tehran residents to evacuate, issued an evacuation warning for Tehran residents, especially in the area of broadcasting headquarters, I think signifying probably imminent strikes there. The IDF, the Israeli army, are issuing evacuation warnings for several towns in Lebanon as well. This is a couple of hours after 3 new waves of strikes of hundreds of munitions on Iran's missile launches, aerial defense systems and other targets. 2 more US service members have been killed in the war on Iran. This is now a total of 6 US service members have been killed. US forces had recently recovered the remains of 2 previously unaccounted for service members from a facility that was struck during Iran's initial attacks in the region. The identities are being withheld until 24 hours after their next of kin have been notified. Donald Trump, of course, had previously warned more casualties to be expected after announcing an initial 3 US service members have been killed in Kuwait. Right then, I want to talk about a story which is happening here in the UK. In Edinburgh, 2 people stabbed after a man spotted carrying 2 large knives. Officers swooped on the Calder area of Edinburgh this morning. To give us the detail on this, Peter Blexley, our crime commentator, former Metropolitan Police detective, is with me now. Peter, tell me your thoughts on this and what has happened.
Well, apparently this situation began in a shop when a man entered with 2 knives, 1 in each hand, and started to basically trash the insides of this shop. There are images out there in the media where there's huge disruption and damage caused to stock and the shop. And apparently, as the staff fled for their back office, where they barricade themselves in, quite wisely, I would suggest, given this situation, one woman was not able to make it into that area of safety, and she was reportedly stabbed. Another person also stabbed, 2 people hospitalised, and so my thoughts are very much with them this evening. This man apparently then sauntered out of the shop and made his way back to a flat where he lives, and a lot of images again are available of him making his way to these block of flats. He was then hemmed in there by armed police, and so began what you could rightfully call a siege for some hours, before they were finally able to arrest this man, take him away, and he's currently in custody.
Do we know how they persuaded him to come quietly?
No, and hostage negotiators often keep their tactics very close to their chest, so we don't. But clearly those negotiations went on for some time, many hours in fact, and there's been huge cost to the public here, not only in terms of policing, but paramedics, and the disruption that's been caused, as well as to the local economy, of course, with this shop not being able to open. So an incident with huge cost on many levels, and I so sincerely hope that if somebody is convicted of these crimes, that those kind of factors will be taken into account as and when they're punished.
Chief Inspector Scott Kennedy said the earlier disturbance in the Calder area of Edinburgh is now contained and there is not believed to be any wider risk to the public. The incident is not being treated as terror-related. Officers were called to reports of a man with a bladed weapon on Calder Gardens around 8:25 a.m. Specialist resources, including firearms officers, in attendance at a property nearby. 2 people injured and taken to the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh for treatment. The ambulance service confirming all of that as well. Peter, knife crime is such a dreadful thing on our streets, and this is something that has visited in Edinburgh as well as many, many other cities right across the United Kingdom.
Yes, but the key word to what you've just said is streets. And unfortunately, idiots in charge of British policing for many years now have essentially surrendered the streets because the police do not patrol. You very, very rarely see a police officer patrolling the streets on foot. And this used to be how policing was done in my day. Now, senior police officers will be shouting at their radios and their screens now, saying, I'm a dinosaur, that's not how we do it these days. Well, they might be right that it's not how they do it, but they're wrong. They're fundamentally wrong. In the name of efficiency and turning themselves into an emergency service like the AA or the RAC, for example, they've abandoned patrolling the streets. And consequently, that space is now ruled by criminals. And as a result, we have a shoplifting epidemic, we have a knife crime epidemic, we have a fly tipping epidemic, and much, much more. And that's because British police willingly, knowingly surrendered the streets.
Peter, thank you. Peter Blexley there, former Metropolitan Police Detective and our crime commentator here at Talk. Appreciate his contribution. Let's go to the phones and talk to Rachel, who's calling from Devon. I know that you want to talk about Iran and specifically India as well. Rachel, thanks for the call on 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say? Rachel, are you there? Rachel, have we got you? We don't have Rachel. We'll see if we can come back to her in a minute. Saeed is with me from London and has some thoughts. Go ahead, Saeed.
Yeah, hi there, Peter. I think Starmer did the right thing by not wholeheartedly participating in this crazy attack that Trump has launched.
Why is it a crazy attack, Saeed?
It's a war of choice. They were literally in negotiations, and then he decided to kill the leader of the other
47
country.
years, the negotiations don't seem to have worked during that time. Why would they work now?
No, I think during those 47 years of negotiations, I think we've had Saddam Hussein invade Iran. We've destabilized the country. It was, I think there have been all actions on both sides. So now
isn't the world a safer place, Saeed? Saeed, isn't the world a safer place without Ayatollah Ali Khamenei?
Have you seen what's happening around the country, around the world?
I mean in the longer term. I don't mean at this exact moment, Saeed. I mean in the longer term.
I think, have you learned nothing from the regime changes in Libya, Iraq, Syria? Has that you've passed that by? You have not been noticing what's going on?
So do you think that
are absolute ruins?
So having the Iranian regime in place is preferable to not having it in place? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that destabilizing the region by assassinating a leader is a terrible idea. And we have seen it replay again and again in the Middle East in the past 20 years. In Syria, we literally put in an Al-Qaeda operative as the president of that country.
I totally agree with you on that. I totally agree with you on that. I think we need to be a lot more cautious about this sort of thought that Syria is now going to be absolutely fine. When it comes to Iran, though, how would you have stopped what had gone on there? How would you have stopped Iran funding Hezbollah, funding Hamas, and raping, mutilating, killing its citizens?
Again, completely sort of, you're even more bonkers than Marco Rubio. I mean, I heard his statement right now. He was talking about, we had to attack Iran because after Israel attacked Iran, they would have come after us. So why didn't you stop Israel from attacking Iran? Israel used every weapon that Israel uses is American. So why didn't you stop Israel from doing this?
Israel doesn't do what America tells it to do. We've seen on many... No, it doesn't. We've seen on many occasions... Hold on, Saeed. If you don't let me talk, we can't have a conversation. If you don't let me talk, we can't have a conversation.
Okay.
Saeed, we have seen on numerous occasions that Benjamin Netanyahu has done what he wants, when he wants to do it, no matter what the Americans say. We've seen that on numerous occasions.
So you really think Netanyahu would decided to go solo against Iran?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Didn't say that.
Then why didn't you stop him? Why didn't the Americans stop him? Look, the reality is that
it was a joint operation by the United States and Israel on this occasion. But this fiction that America controls Netanyahu or Israel is just nonsense.
Look, this operation could not have happened without American support.
And I haven't denied that. I haven't denied that. And you haven't answered my question, Saeed. You haven't answered my question, Saeed. What is
the question?
The question is, how do we stop these horrendous human rights abuses in Iran? Are you honestly saying we should have kept the regime in place and allowed what we could see on a daily basis, these horrendous human rights violations happening?
The regime has in place for 47 years, right? And the Iranian people have the right to remove that as
No, they don't. No, they don't. They don't have democracy. They don't have democracy. They've tried on numerous occasions to rise up, and they've been brutally repressed.
There are a lot of regimes that I don't approve of, including the one in the US. That does not give me or anyone...
Not as a democratically elected government. You may not like Donald Trump, and I may not like every single thing he does, Saeed, but he is not Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Listen, thank you for your call. We're going to move on. Rachel in Devon is back on the line. Rachel, sorry about the connection problem. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I'm feeling very positive, actually, because I see this sort of beginning of this new alliance against this, different types of internationalism, which is, Islamic takeover of countries, or maybe communism, or whatever Keir Starmer's version of an internationalism is, and more a return to people caring about where they live, but allying with similar countries. So India, for example, Prime Minister Modi went over to visit with Netanyahu, and I watched his speech. I thought it was really
he spoke brilliantly, I thought. I saw a number of speeches that he gave. He really he spoke so movingly and so genuinely about the Indian people and their great affinity with the Israelis.
Yes, and I think this is where the solution lies, really, in people reconnecting to where they live and where they're from. Not necessarily that people can't move, but Hinduism is from India, Hebrews are from Israel, the English people are from England. This is so important, because anytime you see this internationalism, like with Islam, you see all the women in Iran had to wear black. And the same as the black women in Afghanistan. There's a sort of depressing kind of oppression, that comes with this internationalism. With communism, everyone has to wear the same dress, and you can't
Yes.
So this kind of thing, we need to return, and I see the beginning of returning to the beautiful diversity of humanity, and resisting this kind of oppressive internationalism.
Well, listen.
From any direction.
And let's hope we get the freedom, the hope that should be in Iran, especially for those people brutally repressed by the regime. Rachel, thank you for your call. Lots more to discuss, including what's happening in this country as a direct result of what has happened in Iran. A vigil to commemorate Khamenei, this murderous scumbag, this dictator who I will not shed one tear for. It's being held in Manchester on Wednesday. Yes, really, the Islamic Centre of Manchester, reportedly linked to the supreme leader. Khamenei, of course, had British blood on his hands, yet Islamists in the UK want to honour him. And we have the deputy leader of the Green Party, which has just won another seat in Parliament, a man called Mothin Ali. We've asked him on the programme tonight, no response. He was at a rally in support of the Iranian regime. Disgraceful. We'll speak to the former government advisor on political violence in just a moment. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We'll get to more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes very soon, but I want to speak to Lord Walney now. John, great to have you on the programme, former government advisor on political violence. Tell us about this vigil to commemorate Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which is reportedly happening on Wednesday. It cannot be allowed to go ahead, surely, John.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? The levels of support in this country for an evil terrorist exporting regime that has brutally murdered tens of thousands of its own people, even within this latest round of suppression. And yet there are individuals and organizations actively working in support of Iran. One of those is organizing a vigil, as you say, this week, and a number of whom have the status of officially recognised British charities, with all of the
so hold on.
Benefits.
These organisations are getting tax breaks from you and me and our viewers and listeners. They've got charitable status, and they're commemorating Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Yes, exactly.
That's appalling. Their charitable status should be taken away immediately.
And I've been looking at this issue for some time, and I've got a report actually that is coming out next week that I'm hastily having to go through and add the word former to a number of the individuals mentioned, not least the Supreme Leader Khamenei, given the extraordinary recent developments.
No tears from me on that one, John, I must say. But, I mean, doesn't that just show the threat, as you know far better than so many people, of Islamists in the UK? It's not just the people who'll set off the bombs, who will try to attack us with terrorist acts that have happened on many occasions. It's the people who will attend that vigil. It's the people who won't condemn people for attending that vigil. It's the thing that worries me the most. Coming from Northern Ireland, I've seen it time and time again. It's people who are sort of if you imagine the Islamists as the actual terrorists as fish, they're kind of the water. They kind of allow them to swim around. They allow them to do what they do. They don't condemn them. They don't report them. This is horrendous. How do we deal with this, John?
Well, the UK law enforcement and regulatory system has been far too slow in responding to this threat. Arguably, it's been too slow in responding to the actual violent terrorism threat by failing to prescribe as a terrorist organization the notorious Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. But below that, there are these organizations with charitable status where what will tend to happen at the moment is that you will make an announcement, you'll see some egregious activity, you will report that, and then the investigations can take literally years. Sometimes they can be paused while police investigations take place. All the while, these charities are able to go on working. And that is one of the key things that we have got to be able to tighten up to get a grip on this.
I mean, if you're someone who is thinking this is wrong, this shouldn't happen, and they think, hold on a second, there's Mohsen Ali. There's the deputy leader of the Green Party who was at a rally supporting the regime in Iran. This is the deputy leader of one of the major parties in this country. Just won another by-election last week.
Yeah,
that's appalling.
It is, and I think there is actually a responsibility on some of the dignified environmentalists in this country that have long supported the Green Party to stand up internally to what is happening to that organisation and to prevent it effectively getting into bed with a really vile, virulent Islamist strain in our country. You've seen some of that politics before over the Respect Party organised by George Galloway in recent years. But there are many people in the Green Party, and this is not what they're about. They're not about the repression of women. They have views which I might not share on, say, transgender people, and yet they are potentially in bed with a truly appalling conservative extremist force in our politics.
Is it that they're in bed with them? Is it that there's this sort of red-green alliance? Or do you believe, and I don't want to be alarmist here, I don't want to be irresponsible, I just want to ask your opinion, do you think there's the takeover of the Green Party, there is a takeover over the Green Party by Islamists? Do you think that's happening? Or is that too far to go?
There is certainly that attempt at infiltration. It has been settling. The election of Mothin Ali as deputy leader suggests that it's going very far. And then the complete debasement of the leader Zach Polanski, who was a Zionist, he was, like the majority of Jews a few years ago, was supportive of the Israel state. I think has family members who are, like the vast majority of British Jews, are Zionist in that they support a state of Israel, and now is kind of allowing himself to be supine as Mothin Ali and others put forward motions that say that Zionism is racism. It is a big problem, and people who are on that kind of progressive left have got to take a stand against it.
You're absolutely right. How can we encourage them to do so? What example can we set?
Well, I think that the government has got to be much clearer on the scale of threat that Islamist extremism poses to our country, and to be clearer that we have got a set of values in this country that means being British: equality before the law, the equality of the sexes, liberal tolerance of other people's views, that is incompatible with Islamist extremism, and that is a very significant threat, and that violent Islamism is the #1 terrorist threat to this country. Those things are true, but they are not clearly enough spelt out at the top. And if our political leaders,
why is that, John? Why won't Keir Starmer simply say what you just said?
You may have heard the bell.
Oh, I didn't hear the bell. You got to go and vote. Okay. John, go and vote. Well, that's a question for the next time. When your report comes out, let's get you back on the show. Thank you, John, Lord Walney, former government advisor on political violence and disruption. He's got to go and vote. He was speaking to us from the House of Lords there, and good for him for doing so. These people should be removed from our country ASAP, says this texter. Paula says, I'm so sad that this country is becoming morally bankrupt. A vigil for the tyrant. Absolutely disgusting. Unfortunately, this government is spineless, pandering for a vote they've already lost. Their use has now reached a sell-by date. You've not even had time to debate Rachel Reeves and are cozying up to someone who apparently supported terrorists. Well, listen, we talked about that a little bit earlier on in the programme, and I did want to talk to John about that, but he had to go and vote. We'll talk to him again soon, and no doubt that will come up further, and certainly Robert Jenrick speaking about Rachel Reeves and the company she keeps a little bit earlier on today. We're going to take a break now, right up to 10 o'clock. We're going to take your calls. We're also going to speak to Petri Hoskin about what's coming up on her programme between 10 and 1. Stay with us here on Talk.
Be nice to be thanked, wouldn't it?
No, thank you is not something we expect from these people who have got their moral compass completely wrong. We're talking about a man who killed more Muslims since 1979 than anybody else. We're talking about a man who tortured, beat women, who was actually, people don't talk enough about this, a paedophile himself, who actually gave out all sorts of opinions that you could marry and rape little girls. This was really the scum of the earth.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who has been in touch. Chris says my local petrol station jumped the price up at 10p overnight on the price of a litre of petrol. The petrol companies are coining it in as all this petrol and diesel was purchased at the pre-action price, and when the dust settles they will be slow in putting prices down. Another person says petrol going up, people panicking and queuing at the pumps. £200 up since yesterday for 900 litres of heating oil here in Belfast. Chancers, outrageous gangsterism. And I think I maybe read this out earlier about someone who was annoyed about the yes, I'm so mad that we still have an office open supporting the now dead Ayatollah and still acknowledge Iranian terrorist organisations. What is wrong with our Prime Minister? I'm ashamed of him and this government. Might have read that earlier, but that's from Angela, and thank you to her for it. Let's take some calls. Let's speak to Ken in Cardiganshire, who has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Ken, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi Peter, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. What's your thought this evening?
I'm sinking without trace at the moment, mate, I tell you.
I hope not.
Yeah, I've just watching that parade through the streets of our city at the weekend with that flag going through the city. I don't know whether it's pro-Iranian or anti-Iranian or whatever, but imagine if that had been a Union Jack or a St. George's flag. Would that have been allowed, do you think?
Well, I think so. I mean, we had the Unite the Kingdom rally a couple of months ago, was it now? And there were loads of England flags, Union flags right around the place. And look, there are some councils definitely that take them down, and they shouldn't. It's the flag of our country. It shouldn't be anything to be embarrassed by. It should be a source of great pride, just as those Iranian people, if they're supporting this change, if they've got the lion on it, that's the good one. If it's got the Islamic symbol on it, that's the bad one.
Yeah, but I know, but do you really think the police would have allowed a flag that size to be paraded through our streets?
I don't know. I hope they would, Ken, but I know what you mean. There is certainly a sniffiness about people who have pride in our flag in this country.
Yeah, but again, on this vigil that's going on in London at the moment, hello?
Hi, yeah, I think, do you mean the one in Manchester on Wednesday? Is that
Sorry,
the one?
in Manchester, yeah.
Yeah.
Until we get the families and the dependents of these people who actually want to stay and remain and be British subjects in this country to actually depend and bubble, if you like, bubble these people who are these Islamists and say they want to be British and tell us who these...
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right, Ken.
We're on a loser.
There's a big responsibility, isn't there, for anybody who is in the as part of the Muslim community or anybody else who sees or hears these views. You've got to refer these people to the police. You've got to call it out. You cannot just let it happen.
I think the families have got to kick back.
I agree with you. Listen, Ken, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Let's go to Joan in Sunderland, who has some thoughts on Keir Starmer. You're very welcome to the programme. Joan, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello.
Hi, Joan.
This pathetic Prime Minister is not interested at all in any special relationship with the United States. He's more interested in realigning himself with the EU. He would love to be back in the EU. And I am absolutely fed up of listening to this pathetic individual harping on about human rights laws, international laws, the lot. This man suffers from selective amnesia. What about the Chicosian people's human rights? What about the people of this country? Is this man worried about closing our borders at this moment? Not at all. He has no intention whatsoever. And when I saw him standing in the middle of that idiot Lammy, the former Foreign Secretary, and the useless Cooper, the present Foreign Secretary, they make me ashamed. I am disgusted at the way these people go on, and Starmer is not fit to serve.
Joan, thank you. Uncompromising as usual. That is Joan's opinion all the way from Sunderland. Let's go to Lincolnshire. And Mark, who has given me a ring. What do you make of recent events, Mark?
Hi there, Peter.
Hiya.
Hiya. Yeah, it's been a very interesting weekend. Yeah, I think my stance on this is looking at it in the round. As much as I really, really hate to say this, I think Starmer's approach is probably the right one. It's certainly the sensible one. I think there's probably an element of what I'm going to talk about in the reason why Starmer's being very, selective in his wording.
Okay, tell me your thoughts behind that, because I've got to be honest, that's not a popular view this evening, but I'm interested to hear why you think that.
Well, my opinion on this, Peter, you know what I'm like. If you think it's an unpopular opinion, then you need to get your head out your backside, in my opinion, because we have two very big problems in this country, Peter, and they're both on this situation. They're actually interlinked. And I think this is playing a big part in what Starmer's rhetoric here. Firstly, it isn't really so much one problem. It's 45,000 problems, Islamist problems. That, never mind the ones we don't even know about. That's a big issue. The second issue is the size of the military, the running down of the military, which now, very few of them are actually stationed within the borders of this country at any one time, because they're just dotted around the globe.
I see where you're going with this, Mark. We're a bit limited on time, so I just want to bring you to the conclusion of what you're saying by asking you another question. Hold on. Let me just ask the question, if you don't mind, Mark.
Go on.
Donald Trump would argue that bombing Iran stops Islamism, but he would argue that that's the root of it is the regime in Iran funding the Houthis, funding Hamas, Hezbollah, etc., and actually what he's doing is trying to get rid of that. Do you think that's right?
For the US, yes, I agree with it. I agree with what they're doing. However, the problem is, if Starmer was to start coming out with similar kind of rhetoric, the issue is we could have even a fraction of that number of Islamists in this country. If they suddenly became active, you could be looking at multiple 7/7s up and down the country at the same time, which the police would not be able to handle. They'd have to call upon the military. They're not even barely here at all. So then what you're going to do, you'd have a huge issue suppressing that. And I think Starmer's more than aware of this. He's probably getting intelligence about that. And I think this is a big, big, big problem. Okay. Nigel Farage coming out like John Wayne, the way that Nigel Farage does about this stuff, just to me, just proves why in this kind of situation he'd be dangerous as a Prime Minister, quite frankly, because he's not taking into account things like that. And I think that's the biggest issues we have in this country. We need an actual leader that will sort those problems out so we can actually do what we need to do with the Yanks. That's the end of the line, my bottom line anyway. And that's Rupert Lowe, by the way. Cheers.
Thank you, Mark. Much appreciated, Mark in Lincolnshire there with our final caller of the evening. Petri Hoskin is here between 10 and 1. What on earth are you going to talk about, Petri?
Well, there's no news happening.
I know, it's really quiet, isn't it?
It's really quiet. Yeah, of course, we're going to pick up on what's happening with the Middle East and really just trying to figure out what the end game of this is. I always talk about the fact that a lot of countries go into conflict and there's never an exit plan. And there doesn't appear to be one here. Donald Trump has already changed his tune, that this is not about helping the people of Iran, this is about other issues. So just really looking at where this goes now, where it goes next.
I also think that even though that might not be his primary purpose, maybe it's a purpose, and even if it isn't, actually can people gaining freedom, maybe not quite democracy? Could that even be a byproduct of it?
Well,
I mean, it's so complex, isn't it?
If that happens, then great. But saying to the people of Iran, this is your moment to seize...
Help us on the way.
It is ridiculous. It is absolutely... It's almost criminal for him to suggest that, because these people are being... already they're being told to clear the streets. If they're out in the streets, they get shot dead for being out, just for being out in the streets, because they're seen as support. What are they meant to do? They don't have any guns, they don't have any support, they don't have anything. And a lot of people are suggesting as well that regime doesn't happen from the skies. You have to put boots on the ground. People have to go in, clear out government buildings, remove weapons from people. It cannot just be done by saying, here you go, here's your chance to do it. So looking at that, and also looking at whether Britain is right to stay out of offensive operations, whether it's legal or illegal or whatever. I buy what Keir Starmer said at the beginning. I hate the Ayatollah, I hate the regime, and anything to get rid of them. But was Keir Starmer right to say, look, by the letter of the law, we can only offer defensive action, not offensive action?
This is sort of, someone argues, the kind of morality versus legality kind of argument.
Where the law is concerned, there isn't much morality. Right. I mean, we've already been told by America that international law doesn't count. It is up to Donald